This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it's all yours, Jim. Thank you.
Okay. So call to order the Town of Tilton Zoning Board meeting. This is April 21st. And to start the meeting, there is a statement that I need to read. It's the Town of Tilton Right to Know, the checklist. Starts off with, as chair of the Tilton Zoning Board of Adjustments, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing the GoToMeeting platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the Tilton Zoning Board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the phone number 1-866-699-4679 and entering PIN number 811-952-253. Providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting via our website and the town kiosk located outside Town Hall. Providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting. If there are problems with access, if anybody has a problem, please call phone number 617-286-4206 or email web@tiltonnh.org. That's web@tiltonnh.org, both of which will be monitored during the meeting. Adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. If you are a member of the public listening in and have questions, please write your questions down, and at the end of each topic covered, I will ask if there are any questions from the public before we move on to the next topic. Please note, all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance, where each member states their presence. Also, please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. Okay, so that is the statement that was required to be read. And to start the meeting, as it says, is Leanne in yet?
She is joining as we speak.
Okay, great.
I'm listening to her progress. She's almost there, and there she is. Yay! Okay.
All right. Okay, so just went through that memo. So we're going to start the roll call for everyone that is here at this point.
Me?
Yes, Leanne. All right. So roll call in everyone in attendance, that's public, and everybody on the meeting at this time. Is that correct?
I believe that you're going to do a roll call vote for the zoning board and anyone in the room with them.
Okay, so just the board members.
Just the board members.
Okay. And then you, Jim, then you ask what public is online identify themselves.
Okay. All right, so we'll start off with the zoning board members. Myself, Jim Engel.
Myself, Eric Usinger.
Matt Gilman. I have my son in the room with me.
Scott Davis. My wife's in the house somewhere.
Any other zoning board members?
Looks like Dwayne's
Brian
on.
Chapman up here.
Hi, I am here. I'm not sure if I'm a board member yet or not.
Yeah, you're an alternate, so you say you're an alternate.
Okay, Dwayne will play an alternate, nobody in the room.
Right.
Hi, I'm Brian from the zoning board in Tilton.
Brian Chapman.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Be a lot easier when we're face to face, but we'll get there.
Absolutely. I'm on my phone right now. I couldn't get through on the computer, so I'm swinging
Okay.
it.
All
How you
right.
doing, though? Thank you.
Good. So we've got 5 members plus an alternate. Myself, actually 6, including myself. Myself, Matt, Scott, Eric, Brian, and Brian. Oh no, only one Brian. Sorry, I wrote him down twice.
Dwayne.
And Dwayne. Okay. Is that all the board members? All right. So moving on to the electing or nominating
Jim,
new officers.
ask who's the
Yes.
public. Ask the
Oh,
public to identify themselves.
thank you. So we'll go through, now that we've gone through the board members, we'll ask the public to identify themselves that are on the call or on the meeting.
I am Tim Chisuli from Tufton Borough. I'm an applicant.
Hi, I'm Valerie Fife. I have a home on Morrison Avenue that I have as a rental.
Dennis Gaudet, AutoServe.
Stephanie Penny, resident of Morrison Ave.
Bill Feinstein, applicant.
Roland Gamlin, AutoServe.
Chuck Mitchell, citizen.
Jack Constantino and Jane Alden.
My mic was on.
Jeannie Forrester, Town of Tilton.
Doug Richard, Wendy Richard, and Jack Richard, Tilton, New Hampshire.
Chuck Mitchell, citizen.
David Fontaine, Morrison, Resident Avenue, Morrison Avenue.
Okay.
Sue Brown, resident of Morrison Ave.
John Skillen, resident of Main Street and Morrison Ave.
Janice Delacroce, land technician for the town of Tilton.
Tim Pearson, finance and IT director for the town of Tilton.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to either a member or member of the board or the public to announce themselves? All right. So then we'll need to proceed on to first order of business, the election of officers. And we have new members here as well. It's my understanding all of the new members, they've been sworn in and they are official members. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, Jim.
Okay. And there is one alternate, Dwayne. He's here as well.
Nope. Wayne is not sworn in, so he's just observing.
Just observing. Okay. All right. But he will become a member. Is that correct?
I think he's going to decide after this meeting.
Okay, great. Not a problem. It's good to try it on. Not a problem. Okay, so going on to electing officials, we need a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. So we can start off with the secretary. Do we have any nominations? And this again is speaking to the zoning board members at this point. And the board members, Matt, Scott, Eric, and Brian.
Sorry, oh, I'm gonna mute.
So to start off, I will nominate Eric as secretary.
What? I will second that.
Scott, I would like to ask the question, what does that duty comprise? You're throwing out the term secretary, and the thought of having to write scripted notes of everything that has been said is not within my
No, Eric,
vocabulary, if you will.
you want to explain, Jim, or do you want me to explain?
Leanne, go ahead.
So yeah, secretary really just takes the roll, usually keeps track of roll call votes just to verify with the minutes. Primarily that's the duties, any other kind of correspondence. I take all the minutes. There's no note taking in that type of thing. But if there were some correspondence, it's not too bad a job, Eric.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Okay. So that was Jim, and who seconded that motion, that nomination?
I did, Leanne. Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll have a vote on the secretary being Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Jim, unfortunately, with the remote, all roll call votes.
That's true.
All roll call votes. Okay, I can do the roll if you want, or
yes, if you would.
Okay, so and Eric, you will take over, I guess, this responsibility once you're elected. So Matt Gilman.
In favor.
Yeah, okay. Scott Davis.
Yes.
Okay. Brian Chapman.
In favor.
Thank you. And Eric?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
and Jim, yes. Right?
In favor,
okay.
Yes.
All right, so that was unanimous. All right, nice job. Okay.
All right, moving on to vice chair. Do we have any
I'll
nomination?
I'll make a motion. We nominate Matt Gilman as vice chair.
Okay.
Who said that? Who said that?
Yeah. Who nominated?
Scott.
That was Scott.
Okay,
Scott?
thank you.
All right. Do we have any seconds for that?
I'll second that.
And who was that?
That was Eric Husinger.
Okay. All right. And the roll call vote?
Eric, you want to do it?
I don't have everyone's name listed, so it would
Okay,
be,
I'll do it. I'll do
that
it
would be
tonight.
god
That's fine.
awful.
Okay, I'll do it tonight. So Scott Davis,
I'm in favor.
Scott,
Brian Chapman,
Yes.
In favor.
Eric Usinger,
in favor.
Matt Gilman,
Sure.
and Jim Engel.
Yes, in favor.
Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. And
This is Scott
the
Davis again. I'll make a motion. Jim, I'll make a motion to nominate you as the chair. Scott
That's
Davis.
Yeah.
Seconded.
Well, I'm currently the chair, so can I serve 2 years in a row?
Yes, you can. You can serve as many years as they like you to serve.
Okay. All right. I thought the tradition was that we traded off, but that's fine. So was that Eric that nominated?
No,
Scott.
I did, Jim.
Scott.
Scott. Okay.
And Jim, I think it'd be the wise thing where you've been the chair with the times and working through this. It'll make it a lot easier.
Not a problem.
All right, I'm going to take a roll call. Eric Usinger,
Agreed.
Brian Chapman,
In favor.
Scott Davis,
I'm in favor.
Matt Gilman,
In favor.
and Jim Engel.
I'm in favor.
All right. You are the chair. Continue.
All right. Okay, so that is the electing of officers. And now we need to approve the minutes. And that's the minutes of the zoning board meeting from January 21st of 2020. And Matt, I know you were here for that meeting, or you were present for the meeting. And Eric, no, excuse me.
No, that was different Eric.
Eric Pyrea, you were there for the meeting, correct?
Eric Pyra was present, but he's not on the zoning board anymore.
Okay, that's right. That's right. So as far as people that are here now that were present then, it was just Matt and myself.
Correct.
Um,
That's fine.
that is fine for minutes? Okay. All right. So have you had a chance to read them, Matt?
Yes, I have. They look good.
Okay. All right. So I propose that we accept the minutes as printed for the zoning board meeting of January 21st of this year.
Seconded.
Okay. And roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Matt Gilman.
Yes.
And Scott Davis. You can just
I'll abstain.
Okay.
I'll abstain because I wasn't there.
Yep. And Brian Chapman.
Yes.
Okay. And Eric Usinger.
I'm going to abstain also. I wasn't there.
Okay. And Jim Engel.
And I approve.
All right.
Okay, so that's all of the business. We're going to move on to the case. It's zoning board case 2002. And this is LAL Properties. There are variances, several variances for 80, 96, and 108 East Main Street, 4, 6, and 10 Morris Avenue, map lot 24, lot 12 and 13, and map U04, lots 29, 28, 50, 51. Let me go ahead and read off all the variance requests that need to be, Leanne?
Yeah, well, who's going to be presenting is it going to be Hannah or is it going to be one of the attorneys? Hannah, are you there?
Yes, this is John Cronin speaking. I'll be starting the presentation and then turning it over to Hannah to talk about some of the engineering details.
Okay, John, that's great. So, yeah,
I'm happy with waiving the reading. I think the chair mentioned about reading each one of the requests into the record. I'm pleased to have a waiver of that at the outset, as we'll be addressing each one of them as we go through, but that's certainly the pleasure of the board.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's on you, Jim. Whatever you want to do it, that's fine. You can let them present each one as they go along, and then you can take them, because you're going to have to, you understand, Jim, you're going to have to vote on them individually, right? So.
Correct. Yeah, they're not a collective vote. It's an individual vote. Correct.
Yep. Okay. Yep. So I guess you could just let the presentation start, I guess.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and start with the presentation.
Dwayne LaPlante, quick question.
Yes.
I was contacted today about the board. My understanding, I will not have a vote on this tonight.
Yeah, that's correct, Dwayne. We called you to see if you wanted to get sworn in, and my understanding was that you were going to attend and then decide if you wanted to move forward as a member of the board after tonight. That's what the information I got today was. Is that correct?
Well, I guess I was a little confused because I wasn't sure about. Nobody had mentioned to me about being sworn in today.
Okay, well, we'll have to take it offline. You aren't sworn in, so we're going to have to deal with it later now. I apologize. I believe there was a number of emails that went out, and we were waiting for you to respond. That's why I had your brother contact you. So we can talk about this offline, though, okay? But you can attend. You're an alternate anyway, so even though you're not sworn in, you wouldn't be voting anyway, even if you were sworn in. And I will call you tomorrow or get in touch with you. You can call me tomorrow and we'll get it straightened out. Okay?
All right.
Thanks. Okay. Sorry, Jim.
That's okay. So continue on with starting the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, my name is John Cronin. I'm here with Hannah Giovanoli, who has done the project engineering for TF Moran. Also on the line with us is Tim Ciasoli, one of the principals, together with Bill Feinstein. Both of those gentlemen have been in the Honda dealership business for many years. I think Tim goes back to 1973 when he was in high school, and he's had the pleasure of selling close to 400,000 vehicles with very high customer ratings. Just to get you acquainted with the property, and Mr. Chair identified the map and lots. It's a corridor of property that sits along East Main. It's at the signalized intersection of the Coles development and the Chili's restaurant. It would sit on the south side of Route 3, so-called, and is bordered by the railroad tracks and the river down to the south. This property, as I said, is about 10 acres in size, and it has close to 900 feet of frontage. With respect to the zoning, this is the regional commercial zone for the greatest part of it. There is a small segment that's shown on your plan, initially for employee parking, that's accessed by Morrison Avenue. That area and a section of the front line of the parking are in the mixed-use developments. Hannah can point with her cursor here and show you where that zone line is. So where she's going around now with her cursor, she's showing the zone line. To the left of her marker is the mixed-use area. You can see Morrison Avenue connecting out to East Main there. Looking at the surroundings, to the east of this particular site, you look at it, the post office and the car wash has been situated there for many years. There's also a landscape and tree buffer that's shown in detail of the plan. Across the street, as I mentioned earlier, you have the Coles development with Chili's on a pad out front. To the west side, you have the Morrison Avenue residential development. Those homes have been there, many of them, for many years, and it's a well-established residential neighborhood. The history of the property, it's been idle as a vacant lot for many years. There has been attempts to develop it for various things, such as a restaurant. Recently, the Lascotti development, some of you may have been at the board, where they went to do a multi-tenanted development that incorporated a restaurant, gasoline and filling station, and a retailer on various pads. That project made some progress, but kind of fizzled out as it progressed and never materialized. As it so happened with this particular project, the Honda Motor Company, which we all know as one of the distinguished brands in the country, certainly something that is very difficult to get a dealership with that Honda entity. As I know it, and I may be corrected, but I know there's a facility down in Concord that sells Honda, but the Honda Motor Corp thought that it would be appropriate to site a new point in the Lakes Region area in the vicinity of Exit 20. Initially, Laconia was fortunate enough to attract this particular business to be sited on that location, but timing in life, as they say, is everything, and as the Lascotti development started to look like it wasn't going to materialize, there was an opportunity to meet with Mr. Feinstein and Mr. Ciasuli and see if this site met their needs. In fact, they had looked at it early on when Honda was trying to develop their protocol and decide who it was that was going to get this franchise. Reportedly, there were near 50 different dealers that competed for this site, and Tim and Bill were fortunate enough to be the winners, had the most compelling presentation, and they thought this would be an ideal site for them in this corridor to bring their experience from the number one or one of the top leading Honda dealerships in the country. They operate in New Jersey. Tim, living over in Tufton Borough area, wanted to establish this store here. Looking at the site, looking at the corridor, we have AutoServe that's been one of the initial, I think, developments to come to Exit 20. I remember over 25 years ago walking that land with Paul Gaudette Sr. when he was proposing to move Franklin Ford to that site. I scratched my head initially because there wasn't a lot going on at the time, but he took a risk and was courageous and developed a top-line dealership there, and Walmart, outlet malls, and all the others followed, and now we have a very viable and productive commercial base there. When you look at the development, this is not the typical developer that's going to develop something and lease it out to others. So this is what I would call an owner-occupied development, where Bill and Tim are going to make a huge capital investment into this site, and they're actually going to live there. They're going to be the principals of the business that's operating it day to day, and they want this to be a first-class development, one that's conducive and compatible with the area, something not only that they will be proud of, but something that the residents of Tilton will be proud of. When you look at the actual project, it'll generate approximately 50 to 60 different jobs with good wages and benefits. On site, there'll be approximately 240 spaces for display vehicles and 116 spaces for customers, employees, and visitors. This will be a modern facility consistent with the requirements from the Honda Motor Company. As most of you know, when these branded car manufacturers set their sights at establishing a point, they have a lot of attention to their branding and consistency. They set up requirements that a dealership has to meet and has to follow and has to adhere to. Otherwise, they're not going to get that point in that location. That's driving some of these variances with respect to lighting and signage that we'll talk about later. The store itself is approximately 31,000 square feet in size, and it will have a service area as well as offices and customer showroom and sales area in the site, consistent with newer branded Honda dealerships that you may have seen in your travels. When we look at the site in a project of this size, and you're looking at something that is going to be in the $5 to $7 million range in terms of construction, and approximately $140,000 to $150,000 a year, and ad valorem taxes, and then car registrations on top of it. When you look at the size and scope of it and the variances, most of them are technical and what I call dimensional as opposed to substantive. The use that's being proposed is allowed in the regional commercial zone. We will need some relief for the parking lot segment, which there won't be officially car dealership operations on that site, but where it's connected, we understand the requirement to have a variance for that particular parcel. While we're talking about that lot that's serviced off of Morrison Avenue, there has been some expressions of concern about that. We did go to the Selectmen and had a conversation with them about that particular lot. And there was some feedback from the Select Board, and I believe a member being a resident, about that access of being employee parking. We took a look at it, understood the concerns. We had looked at other configurations of maybe getting a left-hand turn in and a right turn out, so that would limit those traffic movements to the stub of Morrison. But the feedback was that DOT would not prefer a left-hand turn coming in off of East Main Street. So we looked at it and said there's 4 homes there now that are going to be incorporated into this project and removed. They generate about 40 trips a day based on ITE schedules, with each one having a peak hour trip. And when Tim and Bill were confronted with this, certainly they want to be good neighbors and to have their neighbors be in a position to support this rather than be concerned about it. They went back to the drawing board and said, although it's not preferred, we probably could take that particular lot and eliminate the employee parking so we don't have trips going at different times of the day and having frequent trips, and restrict the use of that only for lease turn-ins and for loaner cars. By doing that, you would reduce the trips to a maximum of 10 per day, and in some days you would have no trips at all. So when you look at that shift from employee parking lot to basically a storage lot, you get a net benefit of 30 less trips per day, and you eliminate all the peak hour trips. So although that's not the preferred option, I believe it's the right thing to do to minimize that trip generation. So that's what we're proposing here, which is a little bit different than the application, to restrict that lot to lease returns and to loaners. In terms of the actual specifics of the variances that we're seeking, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah for a moment, who's going to go around the plan and identify each one of the variances and the relief that we're requesting. After she's done, I'll take it back and address the 5 criteria for the variance.
Hello again, Hannah Giovannucci, civil engineer, professional engineer with TF Moran. I'm going to start with from your agenda. I will read the variance for the record. A variance is requested from Article 4.3 to allow a retaining wall adjacent to the parking area with 28-foot side setback where 50-foot side setback is required. A parking lot with 20-foot front setback where 30 feet is required in the RG zoning district. Parking lot with 6-foot setback where 20 feet is required in the MU zoning district. So the 28 setback is located over here where we have this retaining wall and parking area. You can see right here, this is a 50-foot side setback. Up front, we have the 20-foot setback, which is in a 30-foot front setback in here. And this is to keep with, in the MU district, mixed use district, there is a 20-foot setback, so for consistency. And then over on this side, we have a 6-foot setback. There's a tree here, so you can't really see that dimension, but it's for this parking space right here. And the mixed use setback is 20 feet for all sides. The second variance is a variance requested from Article 3.5 to allow 116 off-street parking spaces where 190 parking spaces are required. The waiver for this is based on for anything commercial within the town of Tilton. The regulations require 1 space for 300 square feet of employees and 1 space for 5 employees. So this type of requirement is typical for like, say, the Kohl's next door or a Lowe's development. However, a lot of this space in this 2-story dealership is going to be a lot of office space, a lot of storage, which isn't necessarily driving a lot of people to come here. We have 25 parking spaces up front for customers and the rest are for service and employee parking. And based on the Honda design documents, we actually have one more space compared to what the Honda design documents require. The third variance is requested from Article 2.4.4M to allow wall packs and 1 out of 4 pole-mounted LED lights to be dimmed by 11 p.m. rather than shut off. I'm going to flip over to our lighting plan. And then the next 3 variances are related to lighting. And the reason that we're asking for relief from this is for security overnight. So what we're asking is to keep all the wall packs on after 11 p.m. and then be able to dim 1 out of 4 lights and have the remaining 3 lights turned off throughout the entire site. The fourth variance is requested from Article 2.4.4D to mount lights at 20 feet in height where 15 feet is allowed. We're requesting this in part because we don't want to see and I'm sure everybody else doesn't want to see a sea of lights throughout here. When we discussed this with our lighting designer, he said if we were to meet all of the lighting objectives, we would have 4 to 5 times the amount of lighting poles that we have on site by not requesting this waiver as well as the next waiver that I'm going to discuss, which is a variance from Article 2.4.4A3 to allow fully shielded pole-mounted lights to exceed 9,500 lumens and allow the number of fixtures to exceed 1 per every 8,000 square feet of ground surface area. And this again is to achieve the merchandising display, to be able to see this during business hours, say in the winter, so that all of these can be properly illuminated for sales. Our 6th variance is related to the signage along with the Honda documents. Is a variance requested from Article 2.3 RG, RC, and GC to erect 2 signs where one is allowed to erect 1 sign, which is 100 square feet, where 40 square feet is allowed. So we have 2 signs. This one over here is our main entrance sign. And then our second one is over here, which is a used entrance sign. And so part of the relief is for the second sign and for this to be able to be 100 square feet per Honda design requirement. Also related to signage, this isn't a variance, but a special exception for Article 2.3 RG, RC, GC for a sign exceeding 20 feet in height. And that is for our main entrance sign, which is 30 feet in height. Again, in line with the Honda design document and their strict criteria. Our last variance is a variance request from Article 6, Appendix BIG1, automotive sales and rentals to allow in the mixed-use district. So we have this zoning line right here, where this side over here and most of the site is primarily regional commercial, and to the left we have this mixed-use area. And although there isn't automotive sales and rentals technically allowed here, it's in the main building, it is to support the parking to support that use, which is what we're requesting. We don't believe these variances or special exemptions will be contrary to the public interest or spirit of the intent of the regulations. So I'm going to allow John over here to go over the criteria and merits of the variances and special exceptions.
Thank you, Hannah. With respect to the 5 criteria, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. This use, the proposed use, is an auto dealership in the regional commercial zone is allowed, and the drafters of the ordinance contemplated this type of use on the corridor. It's consistent, of course, with the other surrounding uses and the corridor in its entirety. With respect to some of the relief that's requested here, being technical, setbacks, for example, in areas where there will be no major encroachment or any abutter that's very close to the line, you're still going to have the same spacing that was requested and required by the ordinance. With respect to the frontage variances, it's basically de minimis. It's not for a building, it's for a parking area, which will be used for frontline display. which is imperative for any car dealership. If you want to have a car dealership in your community, you're going to expect that they're going to have a frontline display that's visible to the motoring public, as that's something that incentivizes people to take a look and perhaps buy. With respect to the lighting issues, we look at the spirit and intent of the ordinance and the public interest. Certainly, the public interest in the lighting requirements are to prevent spillover so that you're really not flooding adjacent uses with light. Nobody wants to do that. The new fixtures that are used in these commercial developments, the full cutoffs, do a really great job of focusing light and cutting it off so it doesn't spread over the boundaries. The lighting that's proposed here will be in the interest of the public because, one, it's preventing any vandalism or an attractive nuisance, so people aren't going into the site at the late hours, seeing if they can get tires or hubcaps or doing other damages to the vehicles. At the same time, this will certainly not result in any lighting spillover onto other uses. With respect to the parking issue, again, Hannah touched on it. You have an ordinance that's general in nature, and if this were a fully occupied office building, those ratios may make sense. Here we have a building where a lot of it is dedicated to non-personnel type uses, which is what really drives the parking count. If you've been into a branded dealership recently, you know the service areas are rather expansive. There's a lot of room for the mechanics to work and a lot of vehicles back there. So to take that square footage and translate it, it really is somewhat of a misnomer. Honda knows their business. They know it well. They know it throughout the country, and they've determined what the right number of parking spaces would be for this type of use. Certainly, they don't want a short-sized parking, and Tim and Bill don't want to make investment in a building where they don't have adequate parking to do what they need to do to sell and service their customers' vehicles. The variances would not be contrary to the spirit of the ordinance. Under the case of Farrar versus the City of Keene, it addressed this prong in the variance analysis, and they said one way you can tell if this is satisfied is, will this alter the essential character of the neighborhood? Certainly it would not with respect to the regional commercial zone in the use, because it's a use that's allowed by variance. With respect to the parking, the setback, the lightings, and the signage, all are pretty consistent with a branded dealership and with active commercial development. And particular with respect to the signs, we understand the rationale for having one sign, but it's rare to have a property with 800, almost 1,000 feet of frontage. If you wanted to subdivide that lot and create a number of different lots, as there were in the prior developments, you had 3 or 4 different paths that were going to be there, which all would have had individual signs. So the variance is required because it's one lot, but certainly as far as the public interest and the essential character of the neighborhood, we believe that it will be adequately preserved. Substantial justice is a subjective prong. It's difficult to really pin down, but the courts have said that it's a balancing test. What will be the detriment to the applicant if the variance is denied versus what will be the benefit to the public if the variance is denied? And in this case, we think the balance tips that both the public and the applicant would like to see this project move forward. We believe it will be an asset for the community. It will be a positive tax base. It will be a clean use. What was discussed at the Selectmen's meeting, although not required, Tim and Bill are making an investment, I believe, of 350 plantings to really dress up the landscape on this particular site to give it a really good view. If we went under the initial proposal where we talked about employee parking being accessed off Morrison, I could see somebody saying that may be an issue with the essential character of the neighborhood, but where we're receptive to a condition of this variance that it be for loaners and lease trade-ins, we think it will be consistent with the essential character of the neighborhood. In fact, it will be a net reduction of almost 75% of your daily traffic volume in the worst case scenario. Again, in some days, no traffic, and it will be 100% improvement over your peak hour traffic because there will be none. Another benefit of this type of use is it's not a peak hour driver, either in the morning or the afternoon, like some of the other uses proposed for this site. You know, car dealerships generally are not busy during the early morning or after work hours. Weekends and certainly evenings are where they will do the bulk of their business. So we believe that's also a benefit. What will be the benefit to the public, and that's the public at large, if this is denied? Well, they'll lose a really attractive development here that can't go forward without the benefit of these variances. And you'll have an empty lot that's not really productive. And sometimes what you know is better than what you don't know, because we're not certain of what would go in there if this wouldn't. All we know at this point in time, it seems like the folks that are really driving the most demand are gasoline and fueling stations. And I think when you do that balancing test, everyone would agree that this would be a far superior use for that particular site. The use of these variances, if allowed, we believe would not diminish the value of the surrounding property values. When you look at the setback variances, we have a busy state corridor. There's adequate green area that will have plenty of plantings, which meet really the goals and objectives of having a setback. When you look at the side to the east, it's well tree buffered, and really what's in the setback, the most, is the retaining wall. So you really have an identified piece of land here that's developed, and you still have a lot of green area surrounding it to provide the appropriate buffer. When we went to the Selectmen, we asked the real estate broker to take a look at Morrison Drive, Mr. Kevin Sullivan, who works for Weeks Commercial Real Estate, and he rendered an opinion that even if that were used for employee parking, it would not diminish the value of surrounding property values. That letter was drafted before Tim and Bill agreed to a condition that would change the use of that lot and remove employee parking and limit it to the lease trade-in and loaners. So we don't believe that if this use is approved and the variance is granted, that it would diminish the value of surrounding properties. In fact, having a commercial development of this nature and scope would certainly have collateral benefits downstream. I'm not saying today for people that choose to rent there, but downstream, certainly the spread of that commercial development along the corridor as envisioned by the master plan would enhance property values and may make some homes that are there more suitable for commercial development, which typically command higher prices. With respect to the hardship criteria, this property has special conditions that satisfy that hardship criteria, particularly in the area of what I'll call the lease trade-in lot. If Hannah can take her pointer here and show us, there is a ravine, I will call it, a swale or a valley that really changes the grades. If the grades were equal, you could eliminate the access on Morrison, but due to the steep grades and the already required retaining walls, that is a feature of the land that makes it unique and gives it the special conditions. When you take a look at the use, we believe the use that's being proposed, particularly in light of the condition limiting the use of that lower parking lot, that we meet the hardship criteria. Having said that, we're happy to address any issues that we didn't touch on, or if you have any specific questions, we're happy to field them and do our best to provide informative answers. I think that's it for our presentation, Anna.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we will move on to the discussion portion where the members of the zoning board will discuss the different variances and ask questions of the applicants. And we will open it up for public comment, but not at this point. We will continue to ask questions for a bit, but then we will make it available for public comment, and we will announce that. To start off, what I'd like to ask is if you could, whoever's running the display, looking at the lot, yeah, that works. The lot over to the left of the screen that you've already mentioned that you've changed the use to benefit the Morrison Avenue community. I would like to also ask what other highlights, or if you could highlight or address what other lighting configuration, I guess lighting configurations you've chosen that will protect the Morrison Avenue community from lighting pollution, keeping the lights towards the property and not spilling over to Morrison Avenue. Could you speak more to those, the lighting requirements and lighting choices in that area?
I can do that. This is Hannah with Fran.
Okay.
So we do have spillover, a little bit of spillover in the roadway. However, this does not model all of the landscaping that we put against here. I do want to mention, though, that all side setbacks have 0 spillover. And if I switch back over to here, we have a number of large trees over in this area, and these are primarily breeding from the abutters. The landscaping that we're doing was not part of the zoning ordinance regulations. However, we did this on our own dime and design to help Morrison Avenue neighbors.
Okay. You did mention in your presentation regarding the elevation changes, the reason for that separate lot. With that being what I'm assuming is a lower elevation than the rest of the lot, how does that play into what type of light? Because the main lot, I'll call it, is higher elevation, so lighting that is at that higher elevation would have more opportunity to spill over towards the Morrison Avenue community. How is that addressed? And it looks like there's a hedgerow, or is there some type of physical barrier, wall, or something that separates those two?
Yes, there is a wall, and let me just turn on my highlighter here so you can see this better. There is a wall right here, and on either side there is landscaping. So there are these couple of trees right here which will help. I think there's a lighting pole around here and around here. They're not super close to this lot, and also that there is that hedge right there, along with evergreen trees that we have on this side and along here to help. And these walls over here, I believe, are maybe like 8 feet. So once these are installed, which are typically like an evergreen tree, they're around that height, and they continue to grow probably around 3 feet per every year or 2.
Okay. Any other board members have any questions?
I have a question. And right where your pointer is right now, your little hand there. Oh, you just moved it. Right where you were on map U4 lot 39, you were right there, right with the blue dot. Between that wall and where you're saying would be the returns for the leased cars and such, the lower lot, what's the elevation change there? Why the necessity to go out on Morrison Avenue instead of losing maybe 3 parking spaces and swing it up to the main lot on a curve and go out through the lights?
The stairs.
We have the difference between, let me just put my pointer back on. This lot and this lot, as well as this lot, is about 15 feet. So to get this to raise up to be able to provide enough parking spaces per the zoning regulations ordinances, we would have to be bringing in a large amount and an expensive amount of fill to achieve this, which we wouldn't be able to do if we were forced into that scenario.
and extend the retaining walls would be considerably higher.
Yeah, and yes, those retaining walls would be about 30 feet instead of 15 feet.
I was thinking just the ramp.
Oh, the ramp right here?
No, like why, like where your dot is, move it up, and why can't it connect with the main throughway with U4 lot and make it a sweeping turn down?
Because between here and here is 15 feet, so we don't have enough length to achieve that sweeping motion. But that's a good idea.
Grade would be 10 or above, right, to do that?
Yes, even a 10% grade is very, very steep, especially if you have a curvature and that sweeping motion as well.
Jim, are we just opening this up to general questions right now?
Yeah, just in the board members, and if you have other questions other than what I started off with, please speak up. That was the first thing I thought of.
Scott.
That's the drawing here that we're looking at right now, and how it impinges on the neighborhood of Morrison Ave. I guess I'm kind of on the same page as everyone else. That I know, hold on. That using Morrison Ave as an access road, you know, that's a neighborhood. I guess I'm kind of hung up there.
I was having trouble. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I just, how close does this development on that neighborhood, or the parking lot there, the employee lot, how close is it to the houses that remain? Because there's a few houses that are getting taken down on Morrison through this, correct?
Yes. Let me show you on Google Maps which houses are being removed. There is this one, oops, this one, and this one. So the next nearest lot is, I believe, this one right here, this one right here. Let's just double check and flip this. Yes. So this one and this one are the next two closest. But I believe the distance between here and where this starts and where part of our development starts is, do a quick measuring tool. So that's about, it starts even more. So that's probably the property line, but the parking lot will start around 80 feet from that house.
Okay, do you happen to have an overlay of where that parking lot sits? Like, can you overlay that parking lot onto like a Google image of that, or is it just not something you have available right now?
I don't have that available right now. But you can kind of see where Morrison is right here.
Yep. And you can see where the road turns.
Where the turn is, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, my concern would be the house that is at the corner of Morrison and Main Street, being that's the closest to the lot. Because I think you're right, that's the other house that's on the other side of Morrison. Correct, that house right there. The other one you measured, what, 75 some odd feet away, so that's a fair distance. But the one that's right there, that yellow, correct, that yellow house, that would be the closest to this development.
Jim, can I ask a question? This is Scott.
Yes.
I agree with what both Eric and Matt said. Go back to the map as we can with showing the parking lot.
I think the development map.
The one that you had the parking lot with the dealership.
Yep. Yeah.
Now, if you go, Hannah, you keep saying that the it's too steep. We just saw a picture along Morrison. If you look at the small parking lot where you're going to have your rental returns, if you went on the westerly side of that parking lot and went up to the top parking lot along there, it doesn't look, those pictures you just showed, does not look like the elevation is a big a big do for that length coming from bottom to the top to come up into that parking lot.
Yeah,
I
let
think
me,
the concern-
let's look at the grading plan, which will better illustrate what the contours look like. And each contour on this map is 2 feet. So you can see starting, let's see. If we're looking at the dashed one, which are existing grades, the solid ones are proposed. The existing grades start to get steep around the 5'10" over here. So
Yep.
between here and here. And they drop off even more
But the
around this
closer,
area.
Hannah, the closer you go to Morrison, the less the elevation changes so drastically. If I'm not mistaken, when you look at that picture you just showed from Morrison.
Are you referring to in this area over here?
The area that's closest, you said you went within 6 feet of the 20-foot setback on Morrison, correct?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're getting at is putting the parking lot in this area instead. Is that correct?
No, leave your parking lot where it is. I'm not saying move your parking lot. If you go back to the original picture, go up on the westerly side of your parking lot and come into your top parking lot. You see where you got the green trees right on the entrance of Morrison Ave, along Morrison?
These ones?
You've got a big tree that right at your entrance of your small parking lot, Hannah.
Right
You've
here.
got a green
right
tree.
there.
It looks like a tree right there. If you went right up along there and then turned into the parking lot, you showed a picture of Morrison with the houses. It's not that steep over on that side. And why couldn't you just, I think the concern that I have, Hannah, is the light is the safest alternative to this lot, by all means. If we can use the light, I think we're safe, the safest way. That intersection is the safest way to get out on the main road from this proposed project. And I just wonder why they couldn't, you already encroached to 6 feet, why you couldn't stay in a row of trees along the edge of Morrison and then stay just inside of that and come into your top lot. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is John Cronin speaking. I think you're exactly right. If there was a way to do it to get everything in the light, that would be the preferred option. And when I looked at it, I had them do different scenarios to do it. And I know there's concern about Morrison. And I guess my question would be, is the concern based on the traffic, which will be drastically reduced, or the lights, or both?
I personally think, John, it's based on not adversely affecting the neighborhood on Morrison with the commercial development closest to Morrison. And I think if you were looking for some type of a solution, then if we come up there, then all the dealership is within the properties that they currently have there without interfering with anything on Morrison. You take all the concerns from the Morrison residents that are, and you can see, I'm looking around, and when they introduced themselves tonight, there was a lot of people from Morrison. It's hard with these virtual meetings, but I'm just saying the people that are living in that neighborhood, you talked about not adversely affecting their neighborhood. And I think that if we're looking at that, I think when Hannah showed the picture of the two houses right there closest to Morrison, the elevation is not that drastic. Because the road, Morrison Road Avenue, comes up on that angle, on that same angle.
Yeah, I think I saw a change of 4 feet on that.
Well, this is Hannah again. Part of the grade changes is we're trying to keep display parking up front level with the roadway that we have over here. So the grade change in part is from that and just the natural drop off. Actually, that's 524, and you have 514 over where the existing driveway entrance is. That's a 10-foot drop over probably.
And how many feet from the road down there? Anna, how many feet from the roadway, from the front of where that parking lot is down to the back parking lot entrance? How many feet?
I couldn't tell you right now because I don't have my a tool to do that with on this computer. But we did actually look at an option similar to that, and it would still be bringing in a ton of fill to even get this movement to work. And my worry, I don't know if this is a thought that you guys might have had, the closer we get to this property line, the less area we have to provide landscaping, because we're going to be getting into the right-of-way area. So if we were to turn this in and come here, well, then there would be a giant wall now that everybody would be looking at. And again, this is a vehicle storage lot. There isn't really good, it's very screened. There isn't going to be much stored in here until full build out, which is probably about 5 years from now. I guess no matter if we did a connection here, it would be a giant wall here and potentially no landscaping to buffer that aesthetic.
What kind of lighting is going to be used in that lower lot?
I think it is, it's similar to the rest of the site. So we have these purple poles and we have one of these green ones. So let's go over to our legend. It's going to be the Visionaire VMX.
Are these also going to be part of that 20-foot pole request?
Yes. But that would eliminate the amount of sources of light. So you would have more poles, but less sources of light. And all of these lights have cutoffs, so they don't allow a lot of light to escape from the side. And you can see over on this property line over here, there's no light trespass to the residential abutters. And I do want to remind you that there is lighting on Morrison Avenue as it is. This is a light pole here. This is a light pole here.
Okay.
What is an acceptable grade? And I'm going back to that discussion about connecting the lot again, lower lot. What is an acceptable grade for a ramp down to that? For if you had a 60-foot run with a 10-foot drop, it would be about 9.5 degrees. There's your straightforward trig. And so what is applicable out there? You know, what is a safe angle?
That's a good question. Most towns limit driveways and parking lot areas to 5%. We were willing to potentially do 10% to get this to work, but again, doing the 10% would raise a lot of this parking lot and potentially make this portion of the project not feasible, and we would not be able to have parking spaces for this development.
I don't think you would be at 10%. I think you would be under. And that's providing a gentle run of 60 feet. You know, you're talking a 10-foot drop over 60 feet. That's 9.5%.
If you did a curve around here too, you don't want to make that 10%. That needs to be somewhat level. So making that like 2 or 3%. So when you say 60 feet over
well,
10.
that was modest on your plan. I think you have more than 60 feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see on these maps. Awful close.
Does that concern you that if we did a ramp like that, there would not be a lot of landscaping on this side to buffer the residents?
Yeah, but landscaping versus safety. I mean, I guess it's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Hannah, can you not?
Traffic on this site by doing this vehicle storage parking lot. I think, John, you said that we're reducing it by 75%.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting conversation, and certainly if it was feasible to do, I'm sure Bill and Tim would have been on it from the beginning. But this is the plan that TF Moran was asked to do the best plan that they could and make it work for all the constituents, including Morrison Ave. And this is the plan that we applied for. I think to re-engineer it at this point, before we act on these variants, is probably premature. We can continue to look at that at the planning board phase if necessary, but I think it's just a very difficult thing to do. With respect to lighting, I'm sure with the dimming issues, we could work with that, and maybe we could work with some of the height of the light poles in that area if we wanted to keep those at standard height. I still don't believe with the LED lighting and the limited spillover that it's going to be an impact, but we'd be willing to take that under consideration.
Anna, can you put up the picture that you had of the houses on Morrison? I don't know. The one that's from Street View off in Morrison.
So you could see the yellow two-family there.
Now turn to your left a little bit, back towards this property that we're talking about. Now you're looking at, if you can go down Morrison, if this is Google Map, I think you can move down Morrison and then turn to your left, and we can see sort of the elevation of the property we're talking about.
It drops off on the other side of the rear of the house, so I don't think we're going to be able to get
we're talking, I think we're talking from this corner towards the main street was what Eric's bringing up, if I'm not mistaken. Because I think the entrance to your property is coming off this corner. Is that correct?
Right in here.
Yep.
Yeah, these two houses are going to be gone.
If you go back, Anna, take a look.
So you look at the elevation there, it does not look like that's much of a drop in elevation.
I
Not at all.
respectfully see it a little different. If you flip back, go back to that picture, Anna. Take a look at that fancy
It's just
car
hard.
there with
I apologize, but it's hard with these virtual meetings.
look at it's hard for everybody. I appreciate it, and it's good thinking, and I like the thought that if you look at that car in that driveway and then look up where that house is with the pine tree in the back of it, the one that's a pretty big grade, especially if you're traversing it over a short distance. So I don't think it's as easy as it might look. But
wouldn't we be going all the way halfway up that lot to the left where that white house is? Isn't that what we're looking at here?
Yeah. You have to get off eventually.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're matching grade that's similar to the right of way. So this entire parking lot is a similar level, so that it's flat and that it doesn't pose a safe or a hazard to people who are shopping this area. This is about a 2% slope this way. So we're pretty close to elevation around here. And so this elevation is similar to this elevation. So when you look at it, and it's not actually from here to here. It's not the same elevation from here to here. It's the same elevation up here as it is here to there. So this is actually a very big drop. And again, this would be over 10% if we had it come right around right here.
So I'm understood. If we're just looking at the picture that Scott Davis had pull up, what you're saying is that your grade is going to be much higher, like, arbitrarily speaking, like the height of that porch is going to actually be the grade of the parking lot.
Correct.
So that's the distance you have to come down to the level for that, for the second lot. Okay.
I think another point that might be important, if looking at that view right there, if you look straight back to behind where that red Camaro is, but continue on back into the tree line, that's a ravine back there. So there is a large dip in land back there, which is part of where that parking lot is going to be, is my understanding.
Correct.
That's correct.
So at this point, a lot of the questions and discussion have been focused at this parking lot this evening. Lighting and the impact to the Morrison Avenue. I think the use change, instead of employee moving it towards the rental use, would decrease certain amounts of traffic. That does make sense. But I think most of the discussion is focused around that lot. Does anybody else have any questions about the rest of the lot? On the board, I mean.
Well, the only question I have, Jim, is were they aware of the setback before they designed it? Because on some of them, we're looking at over a 50% encroachment on the setbacks. And what's the reason for that?
Yes, we were aware of it, and the reason for the encroachments are because of the zoning regulations for the amount of parking required and the amount of display parking needed to make this project feasible. Also, we're limited by how far we can use the rest of this property because of the giant grade drop over here, which was previously a fill area, and so it's a 2-to-1 slope out on the back of this portion of the property, which makes this lot difficult to develop without utilizing this full request that we have for a merged lot.
Could you review again the distance setbacks and specifically pointing out where where they're encroaching in different areas?
Yeah. So the side setback, let me turn on, I can't draw my drawing tool without moving around. The side setback on this portion of lot, this is a 50-foot side setback. We have a 28 side setback to the retaining wall, and then also the parking portion of the parking area within that area as well. Up front, along the front portion of the regional commercial district, we have a 30-foot front setback, and we are requesting a 20-foot front setback. And I'm trying to find where that dimension is. The dimension is hidden a little bit right here, but that's to the edge of the parking area. And that is also to match with this 20-foot setback that's on this part of the line. And finally, the 6-foot setback is over on this corner right here to accommodate parking on this side.
Is that side setback, Hannah, whole way up that side of that lot?
No,
or just down there in that one corner?
I matched it right to the parking here, but however, it does apply to this entire setback here because the variance is for setbacks in the mixed use district, and this is all frontage right here. So we would probably, with retaining wall design, we would probably need a similar setback for that as well.
It's actually the 2 slots down here on the corner that you're setting, that you're in within the setback.
Yep, there's this one, and this one as well.
Okay.
See the shaded line. setback.
Right,
there.
okay.
Right here.
Yep. So currently that's the 6-foot variance you're requesting at this point.
Correct.
Okay. On the other side of the lot that is adjacent to the post office, that is the setback there. If you could zoom in. Oh. Okay, 28 setback, where 50 is required. What is the elevation of that retaining wall there?
I believe this is around 10 or 12, if I flip to my other plan. Around 12 feet.
Okay.
10 or 12.
Does anyone on the board have any questions or thoughts about that setback in that area? That 28 foot where 50 is required?
No.
No.
Is there drainage off in there coming off the parking lot, or where is the drainage going on that, within that area?
Along the entire site, all of the stormwater is collected on site, infiltrated into infiltration basins underneath all the parking lots. And if this is a storm larger than a 2-year design storm, which is the kind of rainfall that you would see, I think it would be around like 3 inches per hour. That would then potentially overflow, and we have riprap areas, what's our plans, that would divert outside of the wetland buffer. So during most all rainfall events, you wouldn't see anything coming out of any of these systems.
So that's actually riprap there, Hannah, that you were pointing at?
Yeah, this is riprap right here. And our entire development stays outside of the wetland and wetland buffer.
Okay. So moving on to the 20-foot setback in the front. So it's 20 foot where 30 is required. And that's the whole length of the front. Is that correct?
Only in the regional commercial district. In the mixed use district, the current regulation is 20, so we're meeting that.
Okay. So you're there. Okay. So it's just in the commercial. Okay. Let's see. So setbacks are, let's see, so utilities, sidewalks, things like that. Of course, there is no sidewalks. That going down to 20 feet where 50 is required. Wait a minute, no. 20 where 30 is required, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it's only a 10-foot difference. Does anyone on the board have any questions or concerns regarding that?
Nope.
Nope.
I'm good.
Nope.
Okay.
Good.
Jim, can I ask another question?
Yes.
While
Sure.
the map's up.
Yeah.
We talk about the safety at the light. I'm looking at that exit only on the right-hand side of the lot towards Laconia. If you look on, there's an exit. Is that going to be a safe exit with the way people, there's 2 lanes. Every time you go to the post office out there, it's like a raceway right through there. people
So that's
trying to
a
get,
suggestion
and
to New Hampshire DOT.
I'm just concerned with people pulling out there, and if you're not paying attention, once that light changes, God forbid, I don't know where they're going, but they're sure going at it awful hard.
That's actually a good point. I know there's been with previous developments, and Hannah, I'd like you to speak to this. There's been some DOT regulations, and could you speak more to that? The DOT requirements and that exit actually.
Yes, we actually coordinated this with New Hampshire DOT, and this was a design that they had approved. And when we did our traffic analysis for this, we're only expecting about 5 cars per peak hour coming out of this. Most traffic is going to go through the traffic signal over here. And the primary reason why we do have this right out is strictly for truck access. If we have a fire truck that needs to come out and go out there, he's not going to be able to get around this building very well, or the WB67 trucks that are going to be offloading all of these vehicles and delivery vehicles as well. So this movement is primarily for large trucks and also as just a safety exit, because we only have this one entrance on the site. So that's why we limited it to right turn only, and we did this along with New Hampshire DOT.
Okay. Makes sense, thank you. Any other questions from the board regarding that exit or the 20 setback where 30 is required along that frontage area? Okay, moving on. Let's see. So the variance, Article 3.5. Yes.
Sorry, I just thought of a question.
Yep,
Back to that parking lot. The
small
lower
parking lot?
The small
Okay.
parking lot. I can't.
Yep.
I feel like I remember something about it, but I mean, I'm hung. To be honest, I'm hung up with asking the neighborhood to deal with all that one-way traffic coming through. Did we talk about if this little jog, the dog leg of Morrison, could be two-way or not? I can't remember if that came up.
If this was changed to two-way, we would have to go before the Board of Selectmen, and we actually discussed with New Hampshire DOT the possibility of making this two-way, but they were not keen on the idea of people taking a left into the site, nor
Okay.
right into the.
Right after the traffic light. Okay. Thank you.
So
But I like
that's a good. Yeah, that's a good point. So currently that is a one-way exiting out to Main Street.
Go right turn in. I go.
Yes. It's one way out there.
Take a right out and a left out. We discussed this with the selectmen, and I understand that the selectmen have been upset with the one-way. It's technically not one-way. It should just be do not enter. But it does function just as a do not enter, and people can go both ways around here. They just can't enter in.
Okay.
Jim, if I may, it's
yes.
That there's a one-way sign there, and it's getting confusing, and it shouldn't be there, and I think it's been taken down. It's DOT. It's do not enter, but technically Morrison Avenue is a two-way street, a two-way road. I'm sorry. But it is not it's a do not enter. You cannot make a left-hand turn from Main Street into Morrison Avenue. In order to get into Morrison Avenue, you have to go down by the old mayor property and come up.
Okay. But the street itself in its entirety is two-way.
That's correct.
Okay. Good point. Thank you. So the traffic entering that lot would, as she just said, would have to go down to the other end and come up through the Morrison neighborhood.
Yeah, they'd have to traverse the entirety of the neighborhood to get to that lot.
To get into the lot. Now, leaving the lot again, just right out to Main Street from the lot. Okay.
Correct. And
That's where, yes, go ahead.
On a note of the traffic coming in, these 4 houses per day, they're on average for our traffic engineer, there'll be 10 trips per day. So for each of these houses, this would be 40 trips per day on Morrison Avenue. By making this a vehicle storage lot instead of employee lot, we would be, the maximum amount of trips per day would be 10 per day. So we're actually minimizing the amount of trips.
Right.
I do want to say, if you look at that, what she has right now, someone coming out of that lot would have to cross 3 lanes to turn left. And I think that's been our concern as far as not using the lights. And it's on a rise coming over the hill, coming down onto it.
I don't know. They won't be taking the left in there.
No, there's no left allowed in.
There's no left over the 3
No,
lanes.
no,
It'll be the same as this now.
No, coming out of that avenue onto Main Street, if you wanted to turn left, you're crossing potentially 3 to 4 lanes. I mean, it's a very dangerous intersection.
But to be fair,
that's how it is now, and
yeah, that applies to even the residents there.
Are all going to go right to get to the main.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was a lot of people talking over. Did everyone get their point in? So the concern with taking a left out of there, I mean, it's a valid point, but it's an existing point for the whole Morrison Avenue. And I think it sounds like they're trying to address that with changing the use of that lot. It decreases the use. So does anybody have any more questions and comments regarding that?
Jim, this is Scott. The only thing I would say is the residents that are there currently, they don't have the you know, a use of that light. And I think that's what we're all hung up on, is the fact that if there was some way we could come from this lower lot up to the lot and use the light, I think it would make it more acceptable to what they're asking to do. It's just it's a concern. There's no question about that. Because you got to remember, if it's a rental, if they're saying about rental people rental and stuff, if it's people that's not familiar with the area, they're not going to be familiar with the traffic also.
I want to be clear about the rental returns. So all returns and all deliveries will be delivered in through this area here. So anything that goes back here, it's going to be, it's extra vehicle inventory. It's not just loaners and leasers, but that's going to be driven by employees. And the maximum amount of trips looking at to bring down to the slot are 10 per day. For the most part, you're going to see nothing moving over here, no traffic. And it's not going to be trip back and forth, because you're going to have, say, somebody's bringing that car down to the slot over here. It's one trip to get in, and they're going to walk back to the facility. Now, if they go to pick up the vehicle and return it, they're going to walk in, and they're going to come out and take a right out back onto the site.
So just to clear,
on Morrison is if an employee is bringing this vehicle into this slot. But again, this is going to be a regular activity, because you're only going to put it down here if that vehicle, that extra vehicle, isn't going to be used at that time.
Okay. Matt, do you have a question?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm just dealing with the 2D renderings is tough. And I'm sure you guys looked at this, but can you just walk me through, can you put a ramp from the back side of that lot down, the back side of your main lot? I know you have a drainage and a swale there. Just walk me through how that didn't work out to come back basically where your mouse cursor is on a ramp down there.
So like a ramp coming from here to here?
Right.
That would require a lot of fill. Let me just go back to this over here. So our elevation over the
Oh, I
strip
see it,
area
yeah.
on 510, and we have 526 over here. So that would be a giant amount of fill and impacting all of this 2-to-1 slope over here as well.
Yeah, retaining
Okay.
wall and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I can
yeah,
see on
a lot.
that slope now. Sorry, it was just tough with just
But I
that
like
regular.
thinking out of the box and helping us with this.
Thank you.
So I just wanted something that you just stated, Hannah, that I wanted to bring up. I think it's an important point. Is that is fair to say it's more of an overflow and not a customer use lot. The people driving in and out of that lot would, for the most part, or entirely be employees. Is that correct?
Yeah, solely employees.
Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to continue on with the different variances, but again, if you have more questions about that, please speak up. Variance request is requesting Article 3.5 to allow for 116 off-street parking spaces where 190 parking spaces are required. You touch on that a little bit, just I know it was explained, but since we've been talking about other things, could you just kind of highlight that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the parking calculations. Let me just zoom in a little bit to see this better. Our parking calculations, and I can walk you through this. This is right from the regulations. It's for commercial other. So it's 1 space for 300 square feet and 1 space required per 5 employees during the largest shift. So our largest shift that we're looking at is 45 employees potentially. And that's just, we rounded that number up a little bit as well to just account for holiday seasons. And then our gross floor area is 54,082. And that gross floor area includes a lot of storage space and extra office space where the public is not going to be. And also, you know, in like a dealership, the main floor, that is also office space. So it's those people on the floor also have office space on the second floor, and people managing the building will have that space. But everybody will be primarily working out of that first floor space. And so if we were to look at this just per the regulations, that would require 190 spaces just based on that criteria. And then so when we looked at the Honda design documents, they had 115 spaces that they required, and they actually wanted more than the 240 spaces that we provided. So we actually have more than probably what's necessary for the amount of parking that we're provided, which is 116 spaces, because we have less inventory than what the Honda design requirements were.
So these 116 spaces, is this all parking on the property, including display cars, inventory, employees, every parking spot on the property? Is that correct?
Good question. That actually excludes the vehicle inventory. So it includes the customer parking, which is 25 spaces, and I'll point this out on the plan in a moment. The service parking, which is 51 spaces, and employee parking, which is 40 spaces. So on our plan, the white hatched area is all of the display spaces. So then we're looking at the ones that are just shaded gray. Up here is going to be the customer parking, and along here, out back here, we're going to have employee parking. Service parking will be over here, and service parking we're counting as a vehicle storage lot too. And then I also do want to mention we have internal parking too on the basement level floor, which is storage space. And I believe, off the top of my head, I think it's around 50, but there is a significant amount of space under there for extra vehicle inventory.
Okay. Any board member have any questions or comments regarding that variance request? The parking.
Anna, how many spots did you say total on the lot?
116 for customer service and employees, and then 240 for vehicle inventory, so that the grand total of 356 spaces.
Thank you.
But we're not including that vehicle inventory as part of the count because we're considering that a merchandise product.
Makes sense. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, like what I'd like to do now, I think we still want to discuss more of the variances, but I do want to bring in the public's opinion at this point. We typically, the normal process for one of these zoning board meetings is for the public to have the ability to comment after all the information has been presented. But because this is such a large, multiple variances, I don't want to lose anybody. I would definitely want to get public comment. So what I'd like to do now is open it to public comment, and then we will close that, continue to discuss as a board, and then at the end, we'll have another time for public comment. I think it's just fair to keep everyone involved without losing anyone. So at this time, I'd like to open it to public comment and get public's input. So if anybody has any questions or comments that is from the public, please speak up.
This is
And
Stephanie
also, I think you'll need to announce your name. Is that correct, Leanne? Okay, I think at this point,
I was muted. I'm sorry,
that's
Jim.
okay.
If you could, it might be a little easier if you ask for a butters only first, and then open it to the rest of the public as a public hearing, and then you could kind of, negotiate through the people that way.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, and
Okay.
yeah, identify themselves by name, and that'd be great, and address. Name and address.
So,
Thanks.
I'd like to start with the butters. If you again announce your name and address, and feel free to speak.
My name is Stephanie Penny. I live at 14 Morrison Ave. I've actually lived on this property for close to 50 years. So, I mean, I have a lot of concerns with the property being used for, especially this side parking lot. It's hard enough to get out of Morrison Ave as it is, as many of us know. It takes close to 10 minutes some days to get off this street. I'm also concerned with quality of life. So having this dealership right next door, the parking lot right there, and I heard her say, well, it's also like, we could use it for service. I'm concerned that over time this lot is going to be used for something totally different than what they're saying here.
Stephanie, I understand the concern. I mean, it makes more sense for how this was originally going to be employee parking. It's a lot easier to have employees to the building. So I'm actually really during the Selectmen meeting that people brought up they didn't want employees to be there because this actually improves from a liability standpoint and access for employees. So the only other thing that would go here, that could potentially go here if you're not looking at employees or service, would be customers, and that wouldn't make sense either for customers to come over here.
I just wanted to add while you're on that, Hannah, there's some concern about making the left-hand turn out on Morrison. These are lease and loaners, so there'd be no need to go left off of Morrison. They'd all be coming back to the dealership and making the right in at the light. So that concern about the left-hand turn, I think, is made.
Did everyone hear that? I heard it, but it was kind of faint.
Let me be a little closer to the phone.
Yeah, thank you.
There were some concerns earlier. I think one of the members of the board expressed some concern about the Morrison Avenue turn to the left crossing 3 lanes. Where these are lease trade-ins and loaners, there'll be no need for anyone, and nor should anyone be taking those and going left on Morrison. They'll be coming back to the dealership. So I think the need for any left-hand turns out would be mitigated.
I can just see the road being used, people going up for test drives, turning around, people in the dealership going up Morrison Ave to get around. I mean, I just see a lot of use that you're saying isn't going to happen.
That's something we could work with people building who are selling these vehicles to ensure that nobody is doing that. Something we can ensure just on a handshake deal that, you know, this doesn't happen, because we don't want to upset you with that type of movement.
I don't have a problem with a condition of approval, which would give your enforcing official authority to enforce that if it was to be a restricted lot for loaners and lease returns. We're happy to have that as a condition, so it has some teeth in it, which would be stronger than any type of verbal deal. It would be a commitment like any other land use condition of approval.
Okay.
I also have so you showed the lot where, so I'm at 14 Morrison Ave. I'm on the corner right next to the parking lot, the side parking lot there. Not there, down the further one. Yep, down there. So you showed that it was about 75 or 80 feet from my home, but the property line is much closer. So what's going to fill in that space between the property lines?
So the development is going to start around right here, where the parking lot's going to be. So you currently have a house where the start of that parking lot's going to be. The landscaping that we'll be putting in is going to come up in this area over here to help buffer that parking area. So we're actually reducing the amount of pervious that's closest to your house. And if we could improve the landscaping to help with that buffer, we'd be willing to take suggestions from you. So this is a drop off right here too. So we built up this area a lot because that's really what's going to be more visible.
And I know that they said it's not going to affect property value, but I have a big concern for that.
Well, John, you got a notice value about the property value. Can you speak to that?
Yes, we have asked the broker, this is thrown in again for the record, and we asked a broker who identified from Weeks Real Estate to take a look at the plan and to look at the situation in Morrison. And the question was, would the value of the surrounding properties be diminished? And his opinion, even under the prior scenario, which was a more intensive use, is that it would not be. If you extrapolate on that and look at the restriction that's placed on the lot, the opinion of would still stand that the value of surrounding properties would not be diminished. I think you have to look at it in the context of what's existing there now, whether it's 4 homes or if you put a multifamily use or something else there, you have to look at it in that context.
Stephanie, do you have any more comments?
I mean, I understand what he's saying with, oh, well, there's already houses there, but it's still going to change the entire dynamic or the entire look of the neighborhood. I mean, and I've been here for 50 years. Like I said, our family's been here for close to 50 years. I've seen the neighborhood change. This is a drastic change.
I certainly respect, anyone that's there. Change is difficult for everybody, no matter what it is. And when you look at the functions of zoning and health, safety, and welfare, the visual is different than what it is today. Certainly, some of those that are there now, if they were taken down and you had a nice landscaped area in that area, it would be an improvement. But the function, which is the public interest piece, and vehicle counts and vehicle movements, when you get a net reduction to the extent we're talking about, it enhances public health, safety, and welfare. So I can't disagree with you that it will be different. And most of the that we do, there are features that will be different, and I can't change that.
Any other public comment? And Stephanie, you're welcome to continue to comment.
No commenting with the abutters.
Correct. At this time, just the abutters.
Jim, I have an email that I received from an abutter that I guess can't get on. I believe it's an abutter. It's, I can read it into the record if that's okay. A little
Yes, please.
lengthy. Okay, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. It says, hi, my name is Catherine Higgins. I'm a registered voter of Tilton. I live at 28 Morrison Ave. I've lived here since 1984. I'm calling regarding the zoning meeting. I don't have the technology, so I'm leaving a message regarding ingress and egress on the west end, the lower end of Morrison Ave, because of the entrance is at the bottom of the hill, meaning 3 in Morrison. It's blind both ways to exit off, and meaning with 3 east and west, and I wait more than 5 minutes to exit to go west without additional traffic entering off. At the moment, because we have a shelter at our home situation, there isn't much traffic as there normally is, but it's usually quite quiet. All right. It's complicated by a 4-way intersection, meaning Grant Street, Morrison, and 3 both ways. And I've asked a Samsung black trim years ago for a traffic light and a crosswalk, and he thought I was crazy as far as my driveway goes. I have a hard time backing into it or into my band without having a vehicle behind me most of the time, because it adds pressure by backing up, because my left blinker onto the right-hand side of the street at this vehicle behind me, and they usually in a hurry. I can't appropriately the first time because they have to go all the way across the street to back in, and then I need to the first time to get out of their way so they can go up the road home. The road was built in 1910 for, of course, the buggies. So it's a minimum width, and it was originally a subdivision. So off most of the house lots are 100 feet wide. It's the same way. I moved three, so the kids have been playing in the street because the 3 side lots, they don't have a front yard. So they play in the backyard or on the road, which is also a difficulty for vehicles to go by. And both vehicles have a tendency to speed. I don't know if you got all that.
Yep. Thank you for reading that.
Okay. I think I might have one other. Let me see if I have another message. Let me see. This is Catherine Higgins. That's Catherine Higgins again. All right. If I can, I have another message from a Cheryl Damas at 27 Morrison Ave. Says, I'm calling about the meeting that the zoning board's going to have tonight for auto serve going through Morrison Ave. I'm against it. We have children that play by the road, and there's no place for them to play. They can sort of our house on Route 3 excuse me, that would not be safe at all. So, and besides that, the bus stop is right on the corner of Morrison Ave, and that's where they have to take them every day to go to school. So I'm really against the job site.
Okay,
That was from 27 Morrison. That's all I have right now.
Okay, thank you for reading those. I'd like to open it up to any other folks from the public, abutters or others that are here.
Doug Richard from 34 Morrison Ave. Is it possible for you to bring the picture up of the dealership with the beautiful landscaping in the building? Oh, thank you so much. So you see the parking spaces right along Main Street.
Right here?
Okay, are those parking spaces level with Main Street?
Yes, they're relatively level with Main Street.
Okay, so relatively. So anybody driving by this location will know that where that big orange building is in a hole. It is in a ditch. You're going to have to bring in a ton of fill to level that whole place out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so all I've been hearing about is how you can't afford to bring in fill to make the other parking lot level with the parking lot over here that's going to need to be filled. Can you speak to that?
Yes, so this entire building footprint is going to have a base level, so a large portion of that will be used for fill. And also, these parking lots have large systems in here, which also require a lot of excavation. So a large portion of this will be pushed around to accommodate for that fill. Yes, some fill will be brought in if the existing material is not clean enough. I also want to point out to this area here, which level with the lower level, which is 12 feet. So there is a significant cut in this area as well to accommodate this lower level driveway. So material from there can also be pushed around the site to accommodate for that fill.
The other piece is you don't have the ravine in that site. It's contiguous, where the distance between the building and the lower lot. Showing there's a steep ravine over a short distance.
So looking over here, this is more around average 5 feet of fill throughout this entire site. And then when you get over here, this would be around 30 feet if you raise it level with the rest of the site.
Okay, thank you for answering my question.
I didn't have an opportunity to respond, Leanne, if I could, to the two abutters on Morrison Avenue who sent those emails. I understand that they're concerned about children playing on the streets. That's where they have the opportunity to play. It does sound like an existing issue. And again, we're willing to make sure that there's no test vehicles that are driven on the street. And additionally, I think the amount of trips will be reduced by making this a vehicle lot instead of an employee lot, by removing 75% of the traffic coming from 4 houses, as it is in the current conditions. And again, this vehicle storage lot, there would only be one trip coming from this way, and that's to drop off one of those vehicles. Anything coming out of that, and this is all driven by employees, would go right out. So there wouldn't be this cross traffic of them coming back here and interfering with children playing in the street in this area.
I have a comment on that. This is Stephanie Penny again. I know you're telling us that we're going to have a reduced because those 4 houses, their traffic's not going to be coming through Morrison Ave anymore. But those 4 houses, a lot of those people have lived here for a long time. They know the street. They know there's children playing. The people that are going to be coming up this street are employees of Honda that aren't going to know the neighborhood. They're not going to know where the kids are. They're not going to know you know, what time school gets out and the kids are all, you know, what time they go out and play, or those types of things. Those are the things that are concerning. The kids, they get dropped off at the end of the street, end of Morrison Ave, and have to walk up to all the houses to the top of the street. The bus doesn't stop at more than one stop. So everyone who lives here has been here for a really long time.
Yeah, you're correct that no, the people who will be dropping these vehicles off do not know those children at the moment. There will probably be around maybe 5 of these employees who will be using this vehicle parking lot to drop these vehicles off. So I imagine in the years to come, they will be very familiar with traffic patterns around here and concerned and aware of the children that are on this and the patterns on this road.
I got some questions. My name is Dave Fontaine. I live at 20 Morrison Avenue, lived here since 1987. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. First of all, I'm not against Honda or anybody else moving in there as long as it's a good fit for our neighborhood. But it appears, by everything that's been said tonight, that you're trying to stuff this thing in there because you got too much slope on one side and not enough entrance here, and you're going to move and you're going to use the street. So the first question I have is, how are you going to enforce or prove that no one's going to use the street except 5 employees? Are you going to fire anybody that uses the road? Or are you going to tell customers who want to go through all your lots before they come into the showroom that they can't use the street? What happens when you get people who get turned over? I bet you have a high turnover rate at auto dealerships. You train every employee. It's impossible to say that you're going to only let 5 people go on there. And if you think we believe that, you're dreaming. That's not even close to an accurate statement. And what happens when you get a big delivery of cars like Tilton Auto Serve gets, and they're spread out all over town because the lot can't handle them? How much traffic is Morrison Avenue going to take when you don't have enough spaces for your inventory? And which is going to happen. Don't say it doesn't, because it happens already right next door. So another question I have is, if I'm going too fast, slow me down. If how you got lights on at night for security with a break in the road. So lights are going to come down our street at the entrance. There is no barrier there. And if you want the police to patrol your area, and that's why you're putting the lights on, the police don't patrol private property. So there's no employees there. There's no reason to have lights on there at night. So you can answer those questions. I have more. I don't want to go too fast.
To your first point, can you just give me a bullet point of
that?
First?
There's no way you can enforce a restriction. There's no way you're going to make people not drive on our street. It's impossible.
For test vehicles, I absolutely believe that you for that. And
how what's the punishment for an employee who drives on our road? You going to
it's not employees. Employees will be using this road to drop off the vehicles, but for testing, it sounds like
how do you know they're not going to test it? How do you know they're going to go out to lunch and turn around on our street?
I think you could probably call the police if we do have a condition of approval that can be enforced. So that.
But the law, once the parking lot's in there, we've got nothing to stand on. You can change your mind. You can apply for a variance. There's no way you're only going to use that parking lot. So you're going to use it to make money. You're not going to use it to not make money.
Going back to our plan, the only potential for this could be employee parking, service parking, which is vehicle storage, and customers. It doesn't make sense for customers to use this lot because this is where the access points are to the building, so customers are going to want to go there.
How are you going to keep customers? How are you going to keep customers off Morrison Avenue?
Why would they want to go down Morrison Avenue?
Yeah. How are you going to keep them off?
Why? Well, why?
They're going to see a lot. Because they're going to see a lot with an entrance. I go car shop and I check all the lots out before I go to be Apple.
Mr. Chair. Point of order, Mr. Chair.
So there's going to be a big parking lot there, a bunch of cars in it. People are going to drive in it.
Hold on a second, sir. Sir?
Mr. Chair, we need to be respectful for the people that are trying to do a presentation. I believe that Mr. Fontaine's answer has already been answered by a conditional conditional, whatever you call it, request, by saying that it would be written into it.
How are you going to enforce it?
What they're saying is that if we do approve it, we can put a condition on it that is enforceable. So that is a point that can be enforced. So the concern about that lot changing use can be enforced.
That's correct.
That is possible.
How? Or what's the punishment for the employees?
We need to be mindful and respectful of the meeting, and it's a legal meeting.
I have a question. How are you going to enforce it? The police going to do it? What is the repercussions if you use the road? That's a legitimate question.
The answer to your question is usually enforcement lies with the police. Once it's
usually. All right. So to be respectful, I heard a lot of probably, should have any impact, will not likely, would be minimal. I'm not hearing any guarantees from any of this. So I think what's happening is people on the street, especially myself and some other long-termers, don't want an auto dealership to use our road to access the building, because basically you're making Morrison Avenue a part of the entrance, the entire road. Use the traffic light, and you'll probably, you know what, spend the money. If you're spending $5 to $7 million, how much more money does it take to build a ramp to get down to that lot? $5 to $7 million bucks. It can't be more than 2% or 3% more to put in a ramp and stop all this madness. So what would be the cost of the fill? I keep hearing it's not feasible. What is the cost of filling that in?
I'm not sure of the exact amount, but it is part of, you know, the fill and the 30-foot retaining wall. I don't think I've ever really seen a 30-foot retaining wall for any development that I've done over the past 10 years. It's normally limited to 10 and sometimes 15. And that's due to cost. When you're looking at a wall, that's about, I think, $100 per square foot of the wall.
Yeah, I'm hearing that it's not feasible, but then I'm not hearing the dollar value attached to not feasible. So you're just saying it's not feasible. There's no dollar amount attached to it.
I don't have the numbers at the moment, but when you just in walls, always a very giant cost for that.
Well, $5 to $7 million is a lot of money for the dealership. Sorry if I'm dictating, but this has been going on for a while, and you know I have a lot of trouble. I can't get attached. I've been thing came to my house
with this turning movement here. I'm trying my best to explain this.
I'll switch gears. I'll switch gears to the deficiencies that currently exist. Morrison Avenue is very narrow. Plow only up it one time, an hour later it'll come back. There's no room. There's only one passageway in the winter. There are no sidewalks. There's limited lighting. Yards are very small. Kids into the road, whether they want to be there or not. There's blind driveways. There's bad water pipes, and the road gets torn up regularly. And what it is, no one can pass on it. School kids walk in the street. When people have parties, the street fills with cars. Someone was killed right next to our house last year on the busy, dangerous intersection that you want to put cars on Route 3. There's poor drainage at our street. If any water comes out of the parking lot and goes down Morrison Avenue, can't handle it, and it freezes at night. If we talked about the terrible left-hand turns, go out of here. So there seems to be a whole plethora of negatives, and it looks like all of them get solved if you just don't use Morrison Avenue. I'll stop there.
Like existing conditions, and a portion of the development here will not add to those concerns. They're actually taking away that left turn movement, that's completely gone from at least trips per day. Potentially doing left-hand turn, because anything coming out of the slot, and this is a vehicle storage lot, it could be 0 trips per day, it could be 10 trips per day, and those are all taking that right there. So then when you look at any activity that's coming along Morrison, and I've said this before, this is going to be potentially 10 trips one way coming right across here into this lot.
I hear potentially, no guarantees. That what we saw different autos spread out all over the neighborhood. This Honda dealership is going to do this thing. You can't enforce that people and customers don't use our street. You can say it, but you can't enforce it. And I'll stop there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Jane Alden. I'm a citizen, a taxpayer, a homeowner, and I have a post office box, so I go by this property daily. And I would just like to say some very positive things that no one has talked about. I have no reason to doubt anything that I have heard T.F. Moran say. It's a very reputable firm. They've been very open and honest, and they've made every effort to make changes and accommodations based on our questions. This is the third meeting I've been to concerning them and listening to Hannah and Mr. Cronin. And I think we ought to look at the fact that this dealership will bring jobs into the town of Tilton. Something very, very important. Number two, I hear nothing but complaints about the tax rate in Tilton. We're talking about a reputable firm that will increase our tax base. And I think that's extremely important. As I say, I pass this property daily, and I've seen it nothing but mud. I've heard people complain about the cars that were parked there. This is an opportunity to change the footprint there to make it an attractive place, and a far more attractive place than what the people at the end of Morrison Avenue have to look at today. And as I say, I go there often, and I have no reason to doubt T.F. Moran when they say that they will do everything possible to ensure that there are only 10 at the most cars going in and out of this lot. That's 10 cars. You can't promise me that 10 extra cars won't be on Morrison Avenue on any given day. And thank you for your time. And thank you, T.F. Moran, for considering Tilton.
Thanks for your comments. Any other public comment?
Yes, I do. My name's John Scanlon, and my driveway's located at, I guess we would call it 27 Morrison Ave, and it's also located on Main Street. Essentially, I live on an island in the middle with no yard. There's a couple things that I noticed. You can hear me okay, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah, there's a couple things that I noticed. Well, first, when we were describing, I think it's great that they're getting away from the employee parking lot, and that's a big step. But the things that I heard from Hannah a few minutes ago was she said that this parking lot would provide additional service vehicle parking will be done in the storage area. It was also said that it would be for lease and loaners. So I'm assuming if somebody gets their car, they could drop it off and pick up a loaner. And then I also heard, and it stated that she said, I think it will be reduced. None of these have been very clear. They've all been very vague for the actual use of this parking lot, whether, because it's service vehicles, it's lease vehicles, it's loaners, it's storage. I think it will be reduced, should not exceed a certain amount. So getting back to the use of Morrison Ave presently, Morrison Ave is kind of like a very unique road. It doesn't connect to anything else. It's only the neighbors, only the people who live on this street that travel on it. It's it has a lot of deficiencies. When the houses were built on this road, many of them were built just a couple feet, just only feet from the edge of the road. And what that causes is when people come out of their driveways, they can't see vehicles coming up this road. when they back out. I think mentioned that. I know my neighbors presently, they have like no parking. They have to park on that street. Mr. Fontaine also mentioned that there's no drainage on this road, which is very accurate. There's zero drainage. In the pitch of the road, what happens is every day the water, when the sun hits it, it begins to melt, and then at night it freezes over. And in the morning, the road is always covered with ice. Now, if we look back at the entrance to Morrison Ave, the only entrance that can be used, it's at a point on Main Street where what's created by the lights up by Lowe's and the widening of the road and then narrowing down, it causes like a funnel where the cars race to try and see who's going to be in front of each other. If you were to drive by there tomorrow and take a look, you can see the skid marks on Main Street from cars trying to stop because somebody's taking a look on Morrison Ave. That same location as one of the emails is where all of the children stand in the morning waiting for their buses in the snow, on the ice, and all that. Across the street from that is the bus stop that later on in the day handles the middle school kids and high school kids. And so they have to cross the street there. It's a very dangerous place. We've had a fatality out here. I believe Dennis's uncle was struck by a car, hit and thrown onto the road. And fortunately, he's. I hope he's doing okay.
He's
then
walking
directly across, there was another car that went off of the road and took out a tree. It's a very, very dangerous section of road. And this is where the lease, the loaners, as well as people bring to storage will all have to stack up to turn onto Morrison Ave. And as Mr. Fontaine mentioned, it's hard to enforce when this changes. The only way it would be to enforce it would be require the neighbors to count the cars and call the police and say there was 11 cars or there was 25 cars or that. It's putting a burden onto the neighbors to be the enforcement officials for this parking lot. Now, getting back to the fill question.
Mr. Scanlon, could I
Sure.
try and address? You know, the focus as it should be has been on that lower parking lot. And Hannah, if you can bring that up for me again. And one member of the board, I think at the very outset of our presentation, talked about doing an internal connection grade. And certainly that would be ideal if we could make it work. If you look at where that retaining wall is now, Hannah, can you show the one to the east of the parking lot? Right there, they'll go down there where the bushes are, the retaining wall to the right. If we can move that retaining wall, would you be receptive if we move that over with that back so that we might be able to make that connection and avoid the traffic altogether onto Morrison? I'm not an engineer, but I'm just trying to brainstorm how we might be able to make that work, because it's pretty clear to me that despite the reduction in the counts and the peak hour, that there's still overriding concern about Morrison Avenue. The rest of the issues pretty typical, and I hate to lose this project, have the applicants lose interest over this piece. And I know with some dialogue and some discussion and some thinking, should be able to make it work as a win-win for everyone. So I'm thinking if we can push that retaining wall back, and again, subject to the engineers and the applicant figuring out what it's going to cost, that there may be a feasible way to do that. Would you, board members and Mr. Scanlon, I know you're a resident, be receptive to that?
I guess, do you want me to say something about that? That was the next time.
Well, if I may, I just want to clarify. Thank you for drawing. So just to clarify what you're suggesting, so you're saying that blue line that has now been just recently drawn,
Yeah, and that's
instead
real,
of,
real rough. This is a lawyer, not
yes,
a engineer
yes,
talking. But
exactly.
if we can eliminate that connection, granted it will be expensive, and granted that there'll be a retaining wall. If there's a way that we could do something like that, I'd hate to, recommend to my clients and to Hannah, go back and do all that engineering and try and make it work if we came back and you folks said, we're not interested in that either.
So what you're proposing, based upon the public comments and folks' input, is to change the orientation of that lower lot, taking any access to Morrison Avenue off of from that lower lot to Morrison Avenue, completely removing that, and then that lower lot would then be either raised or accessed whatever in whatever way to the main lot only, and again, not using Morrison Avenue in any way, shape, or form. Is that, in a general sense, what you're talking about?
Accomplished, because I think everyone either listening or on the board agrees that if there was a way that was feasible to do it, to get the turning movements to the signalized light, that would be a plus. And as I listen here and sit, I understand the concerns. If I was on Morrison Ave, I probably would have the same concerns. And I'm thinking that this might be a solution that satisfies the folks on Morrison and provides, hopefully, a viable alternative to make this work. We probably still would need some relief from this board, or you could take the pending applications, I guess, and make it a condition of approval. But I think Hannah would need to do some engineering, maybe come back on those. But I'd like to get a sense whether a poll from the board or otherwise, whether that's something that you would prefer. And I know you can't vote on it because it's not right in front of you right now, but
Right.
would you be receptive to that?
Well, so you're right, we couldn't vote on it. But I think it's fair and Leanne, help me out here, but what I'm hearing is the applicant would like to get the public's input on this, if that would improve their opinion about this project. Leanne, is that fair to have the public weigh in on that? Is that the correct approach?
Well, I just have a couple questions about it as well, John, if I can. I just want to make sure I understand. So you're taking the access off Morrison off the table. Would you still need setbacks over there, or that would no longer be needed as well?
We would need some setback relief. We would need a
Okay,
variance to allow that retaining wall to go out into the setback area.
So with that in mind, we would keep the existing variance setbacks as stated in front of us at this point in time. Is that what you're referring
The
to?
setbacks, I think, it sounds like the setbacks might be different, right? Is that what you're saying? And you would put a retaining wall?
What I'm thinking in my mind, and I'm going to ask Hannah to jump in, if we can leave, we have two pieces of relief there on Morrison. The setback as it is now with respect to the three spaces that are captured.
And that's 6 feet.
And then the use, right? Because we're in the mixed use zone. If maybe we table those pieces to the next meeting and have you vote on all the others, so at least the applicants will have the confidence that there's an opportunity to do this deal and they don't start looking elsewhere.
Jim, I think that's a good direction rather than to take a lot of comment about a proposed plan that's not drawn out yet. You can probably move forward with making decisions on the other variances. Maybe at the end, take a consensus, which I understand they don't want to spend a lot of money on redesign if that's not going to be feasible, and just get a consensus on that, the change on Morrison from the board, knowing that it's not binding. I think that would be fair, but I don't know if I get into a lot of public comment on a plan you don't have yet. That's my recommendation to you.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, I was in the middle of a just saying a few things, and I'd just like to conclude. I know I
Again, could you, since we've had a break, could you introduce yourself again?
Yeah, this is John Scanlon, and I am a resident. I have a driveway on Morrison and on Main Street.
Okay.
That could, yeah, I can tell you the happiest thing I would have out of this whole thing is for 1 year from now to be able to say, around here, we Honda. Okay, so, I'm very happy to see this go in. It's the lot, as Jane stated, it's been a mud hole. We've been waiting for something. It's a prime piece of property that's ideal for something like this. And I think the residents all realize that, yes, things are going to happen. Things are going to be done in the commercial zone and, maybe some spillover and that we can deal with. And I'm not speaking for them, but I have a good feeling that they'd be happy to, accommodate that and be good neighbors as well, and keep an eye out for your property too. Because I can tell you, we have a good neighborhood watch, and if anybody ever tried to come onto your property from Morrison Ave, you'd see the police up here quick. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Just one, Dwayne LaPlante. In your over where you're gonna have your leased vehicles and returns, can you just put that area on Morrison Ave as a cul-de-sac? It's gonna be one way in and one way out for the residents, and just use the top part of Morrison Ave to come into your lease area vehicles and your service vehicles. Over here on map U4 lot 30, if I can read it right. Can we turn that into a cul-de-sac on the corner and just call it good?
I think the problem with that, you couldn't get another curb cut out. If you're talking out to Route 3, the DOT wouldn't want a curb cut that close to Morrison, and you couldn't get left-hand turning move.
No, it's not going to go on the Route 3. It's going to stay right on the bottom corner of Morrison, where one of the houses are going to be removed.
All right.
Right
I
there.
don't know.
Just before that, right? Come back onto Morrison. You have a house, big white house. Can you show the houses? Yeah, that one right here. Right there. You can't put a cul-de-sac right here and just have it go right back down. It's just for the residents. There's not going to be anybody else living up here. Just make this area. Can you see my cursor?
I see what you're saying. Dead end Morrison and make it a cul-de-sac, and then just
a cul-de-sac.
The other driveway.
Now we're not going to have to have a 30-foot retaining wall. You're not going to have to bring an extra fill. You're not going to have to worry about extra traffic. And if Honda's only using this to come and deliver and pick up, well, there you go. There's their road.
This is Stephanie Penny. Can I make a comment on that?
Absolutely.
It's a very tight space, and I can just see fire department, ambulance. They're not going to be able to turn around anywhere in there if you made the end of Morrison into a cul-de-sac. And I have another quick question. At the end of Morrison Ave, on the frontage of the Honda dealership, I'm just worried about line of sight trying to pull off of Morrison Ave. So you see this, is it a 20-foot variance that you're looking for? How many are they going to put, like AutoServe, they put cars on the front lawn for display. How much of that is going to come into like the line of sight when we're trying to get off of Morrison Ave?
That's where the cul-de-sac comes in. And there's 100 cul-de-sacs in the town of Tilton, Northfield, Franklin, everywhere. If you could just utilize this one small area, you're not going to have extra traffic coming up and down. You're not going to have lease return.
This is Dave Fontaine. I got a comment on that cul-de-sac idea. It really wouldn't work because what you're doing is we have two entrances to get off the street. I only use the top entrance because it's much safer than the bottom entrance. You're forcing me down to the bottom entrance where I got to go uphill to get off the street. and I'm driving into traffic that has left the traffic light and is drag stripping down the road to that intersection, at least near the light, you can see the light turn red and you have a place to get out onto the road when the light turns red. So using the bottom of the street is much more dangerous than using the east side of the street where you want to put the cul-de-sac. The gentleman who recommended that they redo the plan and they don't use Morrison Avenue would probably get my vote, and I'm probably not a very pleasant guy. He would get my vote. If you can block that property off, then encroaching in our zone is not so bad. If you block it and you don't use our road, what do we really complain about? That's Dave Fontaine. Thank you.
I just think with the amount of traffic coming up and down Morrison, with what few residents are there, it wouldn't really impede it that much. I mean, I lived there for 25 years.
Yeah, but it's much busier now.
Yeah, because the area's growing and the way it should be. I mean, this is progress.
The top of the road is much safer. Pull up Jim 3. The west side is much safer than the east side.
Hi, may I
Jim,
say
I think
something?
we're digressing from our charge here tonight.
Any other public comment?
Yes, please. This is Valerie Fife, and I've been listening, and I totally agree with John and Dave Fontaine. I have one of those older houses. I've owned it for 22 years. I rent it out. My tenants have lived there almost 20 years. And this year, they weren't even allowed to park because of the snow emergency. They had to literally put their car at somebody else's house and walk to it. So I am totally against a road coming off Morrison Ave. It just isn't big enough. If it wasn't big enough for my tenants to park on, it isn't big enough for more traffic or for a cul-de-sac. But I would be agreeable for them to change the plan a little bit and go off the light. I think the light is much safer and it keeps Morrison Avenue the nice little neighborhood that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
This is Stephanie Penny. I didn't get an answer on whether or not if they were parking cars on that front grassy area, if it was going to impede on the line of sight trying to get off of that end of Morrison Ave.
There'll be no parking on the grassy area.
Okay, so at this time, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And I guess it would be a good idea to kind of reshape what we're looking at, because we've had the comment of a possibility of a change, and we wanted to possibly table the variances associated to that lower lot. And that would be the variance. Would that be the variance for all of the
So you would
all of the setbacks? Go ahead.
No, the two things that we're proposing to table would be the variance for the setback off of Morrison, which entails those 3 spaces, and
6 foot.
the variance to allow auto service and sales in the mixed-use zone.
Okay.
The variance that applies to lighting, that would still control in that area. So that's something that we'd ask you to vote on. But the 2 central ones, we can table those and we'll go back to the engineering board here and see if there's a way that we can make it work without impeding on Morrison Avenue, understanding that we may have to amend our request for relief to allow that retaining wall to encroach into the setback further.
Okay. But to also clarify, the 28-foot setback where 50 is required, the 20-foot setback where 30 is required, those you do want to keep on the table for this meeting. Is that correct?
I think it's important, for the benefit of the applicant to see progress before they start engineering. And at least if we can get those off the table, it will limit the scope of the next meeting to the important issues with Morrison, and give them the confidence that they can spend those additional engineering dollars to try and make a substantial change to this plan to benefit the folks on Morrison and the concerns of the board.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for the clarification. All right, so let's see, moving on. We talked about the setbacks already. We talked about the parking spots, 116 off-street parking where 190 are required. Let's see, it's required for, so the pole lights. The height of the pole lights requesting 20 feet where 15 is required. And so, and then the illuminations of the lights. Could you speak about those and kind of highlight those again, just to bring those up?
Sure, you're talking about the illumination. Under your ordinance, it talks about a shut-off of lights at 11 o'clock. And we're asking that the variance be granted to allow a minimal number of lights to stay on, being the wall packs and 1 out of every 4 fixtures throughout the site for security purposes.
And you're requesting that they'll be dimmed all night, the ones that are still on?
Yes, three of the 4 will be out, and the ones that are on will be dimmed.
Okay.
And basically what we're trying to do is to shed enough light to make it safe for police if they have to access the site, and to discourage people that may find vehicles on a lot, traffic nuisance.
Okay. The variance for 2.4.4D for the height, you're requesting 20 foot where 15 is allowed. Could you define that, or could you describe that a bit more as to why you're wanting 5 more feet?
Sure. If you went down at the lower levels, you'd have to have a lot more light poles to broadcast the light, which again is an obstacle for safety, for snow removal, efficient snow management. By raising them up to 5 feet, you can drastically reduce the number of light poles. And from an aesthetic point of view, certainly fewer is better than more. So that's the driving force behind that. There will be LED lights, and again, all the cutoffs, so there won't be any spillover. It's really a lighting management tool that was recommended by not only the consultant, but by Honda.
Okay. Can you speak to the differences in the area? We've got 2 major businesses, being the Lowe's and Chili's and Pizza Hut, Kohl's parking lot areas, and then to the other side you've got the AutoServe. How do those pole light heights differ than what you're proposing or requesting?
I can't speak to the heights of any of those fixtures there. I can speak to AutoServe. I believe they have dimmed lights through the evening, again, for the same security purpose, and they have for years, and it really isn't an impediment. But the height of the poles and the number of the fixtures, I can't speak to.
Okay.
What I can speak to,
can I ask a question?
I know since that site was developed, because I had some involvement with it in the Kohl's site, that the lighting fixtures, both the transition to LED and the cutoffs that come with the fixtures, and the concentration to prevent spillover are much more enhanced than they were 10 years ago, and substantially enhanced where they were 20 years ago. So from perspective, I can tell you what we're working with to control light flow and dispersion is much better than what it used to be.
Okay. Thank you. Someone had a question?
Yeah, Jim, this is Scott Davis. I had just a couple of questions. One is, if we allow them to go with a higher light, do they still need to exceed the 95 100 lumens that they're asking to exceed? And if so, why? And to what exceed, how far are they exceeding that? It doesn't say what their lights are going to be at.
We still
So,
need to
yeah,
keep the
go
same
ahead.
lumen. This is John again speaking. We do have to keep the same lumens. This is a Honda directive as far as the lumens and the lighting, and they're different. So they exceed by varying degrees. Some are a little bit more, some are a lot more. But again, the concentration to the site, you know, it's all retained there, and you're eliminating, I should say, you're reducing the poles by 4 to 5 times.
Could you
So we
speak
don't know a
to,
number as far as what they're exceeding, though.
right. Could you, so some will be exceeding by a small amount, some will be exceeding by a large amount. Is there a logic process as to what areas will be greater than, like, for instance, up front, in the front of the building, they'll be brighter, whereas in the back of the building, it will be dimmer? Or could you kind of fill in those holes a little bit?
This is Hannah. The vehicle display areas are going to have more lighting area, and that is per the Honda design requirements for the merchandise. So that's the reason for the more illumination.
Okay.
Other areas of the site, such as customer parking and these service areas, would have less light compared to the display areas.
So we see display areas both.
And when they're dim,
Go ahead.
sorry, Jim, it's hard with this remote.
It
meeting.
is. It is. Go ahead.
And I'd the first to apologize. I don't mean to step on you, Chair. I just asking another question that comes up. What will they be dimmed to when they're put down at night for the one light? I mean, do we have any idea of what the reduction of the light will be on each pole?
I'm not sure. I think somewhere on this plan it says what the dimming standards are, but I can't speak to that right now. But if you are dimming, you're turning off 3 lights and dimming that one extra, that is a lot less illumination than it is just dimming all lights. So it's a considerable amount less than 25%
So is it like
of
50%?
the site.
So to quantify a bit, you're saying lights will be turned off, and then the lights that are remaining on, those lights will also be decreased in their lumens, correct? Okay. Any other questions regarding that from the board? Okay. Going back, let's see, I think the last variance at this point is the signage. So we have a variance request from Article 2.3, our GRC and GC, to erect 2 signs where 1 is allowed, and to erect 1 sign with 100 square foot where 40 is allowed. Could you speak a little more in detail about those? I know the 2 signs, and my understanding, one of the requirements for this was Honda specifications, but could you speak to more detail about the signage?
This is John again. There's the 2 signs, the main entrance sign. Both of them are according to Honda specs at both entrances, which not only provide for mark, but also identify the facility as a Honda facility. And I believe the smaller one to the east would identify used cars. So there's some way movement and some directional assistance on the site. With respect to the signs, I think I mentioned it in my initial remarks. You have a piece of property that has a great deal of frontage think 877, so close to 900 feet. You could subdivide these lots or create contemplated on other proposals, and you could have as many as 4 signs out there, and if they were independent lots, they could each have their own pole sign. So, as far as having 2 based on the frontage, the visibility, and the scope, we think that's reasonable. With respect to the height, again, when you're looking at a site with such a large piece of frontage and you're dealing in cars, we know from looking at AutoServe and other branded dealerships, these manufacturers are all about their branding, their identification, and where they are. So we feel that that sign height is necessary, and more importantly, Honda feels it's necessary for this particular franchise.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any board members have any questions regarding the
Jim?
signage? Yes.
Jim, what's the height of the sign at Lowe's across the street from this intersection?
I do not know. And so the Lowe's pylon style sign, I'm looking at a map view now, a street view, and I don't have a dimension, but it's not much higher than the traffic lights, about the same size, about the same height probably. That's what I see.
Can I ask how high a traffic light is?
You can. I would not be able to answer that. But you can ask.
Yeah, well,
It would have to be more than at least, because those are bridge clearances. So it could be between around like 20 upwards of that.
Is the requirement from Honda the actual sign size versus the height? I know there was a statement made something about Honda specifications in here.
I believe that it is, and part of the function, these new branded dealerships, you don't see the Franklin Fords in downtown areas. They want them in proximity to the interstate. So they're trying to get visibility for people that they're hoping are driving to this exit to come and buy a Honda. Plus, you have a lot of intense development between there and the interchange at 93. And I think if you look at Coles, and Hannah will correct me if I'm wrong, regardless of what that elevation is, I think it's uphill from this substantially as it goes up. So, when you look at it in balance from the street view, it probably won't be offsetting. And I believe AutoServe has some signs, at least one of them, that would be at 30 feet or maybe in excess of that.
So the intent is for one of these signs to be seen from 93. Is that what I heard?
Not to be seen from driving on 93, but for people that are motoring on Route 3 to be able to identify where it is, where it's kind of at the tail end of the commercial stretch now, and you've got some elevation difference there, and that's what Honda dictates that they want for their sign heights.
Okay.
They're saying, by the way, that traffic lights are about 18 feet. I'm looking at the internet on a side computer, and it says 18 feet above the streets is where they're mounted. So if it's at the same height, it's 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'd have to say I don't have as much of a problem with the going to the 100 square feet as I do to the 30 feet height. That's more of a problem. If the low sign is 20, that's a pretty decent sign, and you're at a stoplight there also. And most of the time, for me, I get stopped at that light more times than I don't, just because when one person comes out of Lowe's, it triggers the light out of that intersection. And I'm sure when this dealership goes in, that they're going to have the same thing on their side. So when someone goes to pull out of that dealership, it's going to trigger the light. So you're going to have traffic stop there a lot, and they'll, to my thinking is the size of the sign versus the height. I'd be more inclined to allow the size of the sign versus the height.
I mean, that auto serve sign down at the end of exit on the southbound side of exit 20 has got to be in the 30-foot or higher range. I mean, it's higher than a traffic light is.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just flip it around for a second. You know, what's the health, safety, and welfare negativity if you have 30 as opposed to 20? I mean, those signs there look really nice. They fit with the dealership, you know, motif and the way these things work. So, I mean, I don't see that having it at 30 is going to create any impairment to health, safety, and welfare, which drives all zoning.
The special exception for Article 2.3 RGRCGC is a sign exceeding 20 feet in height. Does not specify a height. So you're requesting 30 feet?
I believe it does in the application, maybe on the call-out section that it doesn't, but in the narrative we talk about 30 feet in height.
Okay.
The variance, their petition does specifically spell out the exact size they want, and it does say 30.
Okay, all right. Good. Okay. So we've covered all of the variances in a lot of detail in some areas. Any board member have any other questions, comments, or thoughts regarding all of the variances, excluding the ones that we are going to table at this point?
I'm good. My hangups were in the ones we've tabled, so I don't have any other questions.
Okay.
I'm good also.
I'm fine, Jim.
Okay.
I'm good, Jim.
All right. I think at this point, I did mention that we were going to open it back up to public comment. We've had a lot of public comment, and I don't want to bog down the meeting, but I do want, since we've had more discussion and more information brought up, I would like to open it up to public comment, and if it's anything pertaining to new and different information that we just discussed.
This is Stephanie Penny. I just have two quick questions. One is how many lights are going to be left on in the lower lot, or the dimmed in the lower lot? And the other one is, I know the comment of a 30-foot sign and he's saying it's not going to cause any harm, but what is that going to be seen from my home is what I want to know. That's it.
Regarding the lower lot, we're considering doing a different configuration per your suggestions where everything is level. So if there was something that was level over here, it would be 1 out of 4 lights. And if we were just to pretend that this was raised up and just look at what the lighting is on this plan over here, I can tell you how many lights are in this lot. And that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there would be about 1 in this relative area that would stay on, but it would be dimmed. And then can you remind me of your second question about the sign?
Can she see it from her house? I think
height of the sign.
I mean, your house is right at the corner over here, so let's look at the grading. Your house, I'm going to say, is around 508, 510. Proposed front of the site is going to be around 530, 534. You're going to have a 6-foot wall over here, so that's going to bring this up to about 530 along here. So if you're looking at 4 and a 30-foot sign potentially, but there'll be landscaping along here which will impact the view of that sign over here.
If I also may ask, to go along with that question Stephanie had about the visibility, will that sign be turned off at night?
That's a good question. If Tim is there, maybe you can weigh in.
Yeah, hi everyone. Typically, we turn when the lights would dim, we would turn off the sign anyway. Somebody had a question about the sign itself. The actual lit part of the sign is only 10 by 10. What's below that is a pedestal that the sign sits on. It is not illuminated. So I don't know if that helps, but when we dim the lights on the lot, we would turn off the brand sign.
Thank you for the clarification.
Do they have a picture of the sign?
Wait, you asking me?
No, I'm asking the chair. Do they have a picture of the sign?
I do not know of a picture.
We can bring up a picture. Hang in there for a
We
second.
can certainly get you a picture of what it looks like, but it's a standard Honda brand sign. They're very good looking.
Tim, is it a monument sign or a pole sign? Is it a
It's a
monopole?
monument. Yeah, it's actually inside. There's poles, but it's clad in white aluminum, and the top is the Honda blue with the white letters.
Okay. Any other public comment while they're looking for a picture of this sign?
I have a comment and a question. This is Dave Fontaine. The signs at AutoServe are not near any houses. This sign is going to be near houses, so it's not a good comparison. The question I have is, I know Honda has dealerships all over. It's a great company and everything. Do any other Honda dealers have reduced signage, or are they all at 30 feet, or it's a deal breaker? If it's 20 feet, 25 feet, let's say, is it a deal breaker? Because I don't want to look at it from my house, and I know Stephanie will be able to see it because I just know the area.
Well, to answer your question, I don't know. I can tell you our sign in New Jersey is 40 feet tall with a 10 by 10 head.
Yeah, so you can see it from New York. We're not interested in that. I'm just interested in Morrison Ave.
Certainly can't see it from New York.
I'm only teasing.
If you guys
The
want to see a
sign
sign, Jim and Scott, if you guys look at the Creponi dealership on Route 3 in Bow, they have what I would imagine is the white and blue sign. It's right to your right, I think.
It's on the other side.
Right. Yeah, other side of the highway.
Don't you have it on the design drawings?
Oh, yes.
You're right in the right spot on your Google Maps. You just got to turn 180 degrees.
I think I have a cut sheet of what it looks like on here.
For this specific
site. What they have to use, can't they bring it?
There you go.
That one's an interstate one.
It looks like that, right?
But it looks
That's similar to what the one in Bow looks like.
I don't know if this will help the board, but having done these signs for the manufacturers, somebody asked the question about, is it a deal breaker with the manufacturer to get a smaller sign? I can tell you that it's a long process to get them to change their sign guidelines. It's not something they want to do. And it would be, it had to be the perfect circumstance for them to decide to do it. And it's not very often.
And as a reminder, we're not using that interstate sign, which is typical for a lot of dealerships. We're using the next lower one down, which is a lot smaller significantly compared to that interstate sign.
So it's roughly 30 foot high and the aluminum clad, like you're saying. Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. So we'll go ahead and close public comment at this point, and we will proceed to any last comments, thoughts, or opinions from the board members. Okay. So the next step, we will evaluate each variance based upon the 5 criteria. And Leanne, we have to vote on them individually. Do we have to speak to each of the 5 criteria individually for each variance?
I think the presenter already spoke to all the criteria, I believe, and so I think you're good on, but you do need to take them separately.
Vote on them separately, but
right. If you do deny, you need to state the reason for denial.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So.
I mean, I assume you're making your decision. I'm sorry, Jim. I guess I just want to say you are making your decision based on the criteria only.
Correct.
And, as you're discussing it or making your decision, I don't know that you don't have to read all the criteria.
Okay.
To the extent it helps, Mr. Chairman, we'll waive the reading of each of the criteria for each one. And I think it was correct that we've addressed them in our presentation and in our narrative, so the record has information supporting the criteria.
Okay. And I was wanting to group all of them into one discussion about how they fit with the criteria. But then again, we will have to vote individually. But just to clarify, there is a variance request, Article 2.3, RG, RC, GC, to erect 2 signs where one is allowed, and to erect 1 sign which is 100 square feet where 40 is allowed. A variance from Article 2.4.4 A3 to allow full shielded pole mounted lighting to exceed 9,500 lumens, where and allow for the number of fixtures to exceed 1 per every 8,000 square feet of ground surface. Another variance as requested for Article 2.4.4 D to mount lights at 20 feet in height where 15 is allowed. Another variance is requested from Article 2.4.4 M to allow wall packs and 1 of 4 pole-mounted lights to be dimmed by 11 rather than shut off. Variance is requested for Article 3.5 or from Article 3.5 to allow 116 off-street parking spaces where 190 spaces are required. A variance for Article 4.3, and this is the setbacks, and we're going to adjust it slightly. The variance requested is to allow a retaining wall adjacent to the parking area with 28-foot setback, a side setback where 50 is required, and a parking lot with 20-foot setback where 30 is required in the RG zoning district. We are tabling the 6-foot setback where 20 is required. So we will not be voting on that portion of that variance request. And then we were also tabling a variance request, Article 6, auto sales and rentals to allowed in the mixed use district. We are not voting on that one at this point. Then we are going to vote on a special exception for Article 2.3, RG, RC, GC for a sign exceeding 20 feet in height. So to talk about all of those, excluding the tabled ones, we will talk about them collectively. A variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Do we agree? And this is a question to the board, all board members. Do you agree or not with these variances being contrary to the public interest?
There, on the 20-foot front setback versus 30, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay. Should we put something in there? There was some concern about about cars being parked on that grass strip between the front of the dealership and the roadway.
I think that was on the other side, Scott, though. They were concerned about that on the other side. There isn't a setback issue.
Right?
No, on the other end, they don't have a
Within that
setback issue.
Right. So
they don't?
the pictures on the screen right now, they are not requesting a setback for that area because it's a different district. Their parking lot line is outside or at that setback line, so they're not asking for a variance for that area.
So the side where they were concerned about cars.
Can we put something?
To answer your question, we can. We can put a requirement, but actually, Leanne, I'm thinking we can't because they're not requesting a variance for that. So we're not actually voting on that area, a variance for that area.
But we put on the right side, though, you're saying, on the grassy side, where they are looking to cut into the 30-foot setback.
Correct.
Because it'd be just it'd be on this area and then the small area by the sign, correct? Because that would be in the RG area. Is that correct? Yeah. Where the lot lines go up through?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, but my understanding too.
So by the sign would also be, I just think that would be prudent because I don't think there should be cars parked out on the grass out in front of the dealership. And I know that does happen.
I buy into that.
I just don't know how to, I guess, Chair, I don't know how to put it in the wording. I'll rely on you for guidance on that.
Understood. Okay. Any other comments from the board regarding the variance will not be contrary to the public interest? And again, this is all of the variances excluding the ones we're tabling.
I don't see any issue.
Okay. Moving on to the spirit of the ordinance is observed. Do we feel any comments about the spirit of the ordinances being observed with the variances they're requesting? And the special exception, I keep forgetting to mention that. So there's comments? Thoughts?
Yep.
Do
Chair,
we
we're going to put
agree?
on, Chair,
Yes.
are we also going to put on that special exemption not, it says for a sign exceeding 20 feet in height, but are we going to limit that to 30? Because there was talk about some are 40 and.
No, I believe it
Because
was
in the,
stated what they
They
are
state the
requesting
plan.
is,
I think they specifically asked for 30, so they have to adhere to that.
yes. Yeah, so in
so we just
the,
have to say what's in the plan?
right, so the agenda,
Or you can
the
actually say 30. You can say 30 if you want.
yeah, because that's what they're requesting. Their application does request a 30-foot. The agenda does not state that, but their application does state that. So we are voting
Okay, so
on
we
their
don't have to put it
application.
within what was in front of us? Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
their application is in front of us. It's stated in the application.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of reading trying to stay up with the meeting and
Yes,
look through these
yes, there is.
pages also.
Yep. No, that's good. Keep asking. All right. I don't want to push through here, but what I'm hearing is that the variance will not be contrary to the public interests. And at this point, does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. We will have a vote, so this is just getting the input. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. Does everyone agree with that?
I think so. I think that even the 30 feet high, it's still sticking with what that area of town is. We always run into these problems where the commercial and residential districts intersect. But it seems to fit in the area with me, but I'm open to being persuaded otherwise.
Matt, I heard everything you said, but it was very, very difficult. I don't know if it's your connection.
Is this better?
Not much.
No.
But I do hear you.
Can you repeat what he said then, Tim? Because I couldn't hear hardly anything.
Okay. His concern is the height of the sign with the proximity to the residential district, in the residential area. And he also mentioned that he is. Go ahead, Matt.
I don't know if you can hear me any better. I'm just saying that we've run into this in the past where our commercial and residential districts kind of intersect. But I don't think that in this instance that sign is out of character for the rest of the area. But I would be open to being convinced otherwise if somebody feels strongly about it.
Did everyone hear that? His concern or his belief is that it fits with the commercial area. The sign height fits with the commercial area, but because it's close to or adjacent to a residential area, it doesn't fit with that. So he would be open to discussion about that, is what he said.
This is Scott again. I think a concern that I only can.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on. I didn't know if Matt, go ahead and speak if you have something to say.
I was just saying we've had this discussion in the past, and we've ultimately decided that, it's awkward when the residential areas and the commercial areas intersect like this. But so far, they have all ultimately fit the bill, and I feel that this instance fits the bill.
Yeah, I think an important part is having the sign shut down at night so that it's not on for the neighborhood to have to reflect into the neighborhood per se while they're trying to sleep.
And also, I think it's fair to say is this is not an illuminated sign, at least at the full height. There might be some illuminated component of it, but the full height of the sign is not illuminated.
In its entirety, that's a good point.
All right, so moving on, the substantial justice is done. Does everyone have any comments regarding that?
I'm just reading here.
Yep. Does everyone understand what that is talking about, what that is asking about the substantial justice?
You can highlight it for us, Chair.
Yeah, I know, but tell me for other people.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
That's the one where the justice to the person asking for it and compared against the justice of the community, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and that's the one with the most gray involved in it.
Yeah.
So to kind of break it down into understandable language, if we were to deny this, would the public be gained at the same capacity that the applicant would be lost? I mean, is there justice there? If we approved it, would the applicant be gained, or in the and the public harmed or lost at the same rate? Is my understanding.
Yeah.
And that's,
To me, the gain to the public of a undeveloped piece of property that now gets developed is greater than the loss of some setbacks on some parking lots and a few feet higher telephone poles or light poles. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the
right.
general feeling.
Yeah, I would agree.
Whereas the loss to
I
the
agree too, Matt.
applicant, whereas the loss to the applicant for
greater than public.
Right, that the amount of loss or changes that would have to be done to meet the specific requirements to this lot.
Right.
Yep. So I believe that there is substantial justice.
I would agree.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yep.
Moving on to the values of the surrounding properties are not diminished. Now, we did have a statement from a developer that indicated, and I think that had a lot to do with the use of the Morrison Avenue. So I know that is something that's that lower lot, we're tabling that at this point. They're considering reevaluating. But I think for me, the value of the property is impacted by that lower lot. So if that lower lot is not involving Morrison Avenue, the surrounding properties will be negatively impacted less, I believe.
Yeah,
if at all, I guess.
We're not considering those lower lots, right? That's out.
Correct. Well, at this point, they're saying that they're going to reevaluate the plan and try to come up with a solution that eliminates that lower lot access to Morrison.
So we're just talking about the value of properties based on the lot line setbacks and the lights and the sign.
That's my understanding at this point, yes.
Yeah, I don't see anything. I see it would increase values, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we were talking about that lot the way they had it originally designed, it would be adversely affecting the property values on Morrison. But I think if they come back with a plan that doesn't affect Morrison, then that is a betterment for the people on Morrison.
Okay.
Agreed.
And then literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship, meaning for the applicant, if we were to confine all of their variances to specifically the ordinances and not allow any variances, would that result in unnecessary hardship for the applicant? And I believe it would. So I think the variance requests are legitimate.
I agree.
I agree.
Because I think in a lot of ways it would make this this specific development being a Honda dealership because of the Honda requirements in certain areas, I think that would make that less attractive. So that would be a hardship. So what I'm hearing is that everyone agrees on the board that all these 5 criteria are met for the variances and the special exception that they're requesting. Does everybody agree? And then we can proceed to a vote.
Agree.
Agreed.
Agreed.
All right. So at this point, we would need someone to propose approval of a variance, and we're going to approval or denial. I mean, it's your choice, whoever proposes it, to approve or deny one variance at a time, and we'll go down through them. And we can use the agenda starting at the top. I'll start it off. I propose that we vote on the variant that is requested for Article 2.3, RG, RC, GC, to erect 2 signs, where one is allowed, erect 1 sign, which 100 square foot, where 40 square foot is allowed.
Can I, Jim, can I ask you to
Yes.
actually make your motions in the affirmative? And also you might want to include the size and height of that second sign, which I believe per the plan agenda is 25 feet and 16 feet high. Correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, or correct me on that.
Okay, it's not on the agenda, so.
No, but it's on the plan. It's 25, I believe, and 16 feet.
We have 30 on the plan. On the
Yeah.
For the second sign?
The other one is
Second sign is
only
16.
Second sign is 16, yep.
25 and 16, I think, right?
30 and 16, right?
No, it's 30 and 16.
Yeah, 30 and 16.
No.
I think we're talking about different things. About the
Yeah,
size
talking about
of
different
it.
things. The second sign is 25 square feet in size, right? And 16 feet high, is that right? Okay.
Correct.
And we're not talking about the
Okay.
height on the
Yeah.
first sign.
The height is a special exception, so that's separate. All right, so I will, I propose that we approve the variance that they are
Thank you.
requesting for Article 2.3, our GRC and GC, to erect 2 signs, where 1 is allowed, to erect 1 sign, which is 100 square feet, where 40 foot is allowed, and the second sign, 16, what was the square footage again?
25.
25
square
or
feet.
16?
No, 25, nothing's allowed. So 25
Okay.
square feet.
On the
25
second
square feet
sign.
at 16 feet high.
Okay.
Okay?
That is
That's what I
my,
have.
okay. Thank you.
Okay. That is my
That is what I
motion.
propose.
Okay, second. Have a second.
Seconded.
We have a second.
Eric, can I
Is
just
there
say
Matt?
something? No, this is Scott.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we can discuss it at this point.
Can you ask the people who are not participating in the discussion to shut their mics off? I'm getting a lot of background noise and it's hard to hear you. I
Okay.
don't know where it's
Yeah.
coming from.
That's a good point. Anyone that is not speaking, if you could please mute your mics.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, that clears it up.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, good point. Thank you. All right, so I propose the approval of the variance, and Matt, you second that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we will go with a roll call vote for that first variance. And Leanne, you want to go with that?
Yep. Matt?
In
Matt
favor.
Gilman? Brian Chapman?
In favor.
Scott Davis?
In favor.
And Eric Usinger?
In favor.
And Jim Engel?
In favor.
You want to just keep going, Jim?
Yeah, okay. I guess we don't have, since everybody voted affirmative, no, we don't have to ask anybody
Opposed? No.
not in favor,
It's
opposed.
roll
So,
call. Roll
okay,
call, so.
that's true. All right. All right. So I'll also propose that we approve the variance request for from Article 2.4.4 A3 to allow fully shielded pole-mounted lighting to exceed 95 lumens and allow the number of fixtures to exceed 1 per every 8,000 square foot of ground square surface area. Anyone second that?
I'll second that.
Who's that?
Eric,
Eric, thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay. And any other thoughts or comments before we vote?
Take a roll.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Eric? Eric
Affirmative.
Brian Chapman?
I approve.
Scott Davis?
Affirmative.
Matt Gilman? Matt?
Matt, are you there?
In favor.
Thank you. And Jim Engel?
In favor?
Oh, passes unanimous.
Yep. Unanimous.
Yep. Number
Okay.
3.
I don't have, just for all the board members, I don't have to be the only one, but I don't mind. So I propose that.
Well.
What's that?
I said this is working well.
That's right.
Yeah.
I propose a variance. I propose that we approve the variance that they're requesting for from Article 2.4.4D to mount lights at 20 feet in height where 15 is allowed.
Seconded.
I'll second that.
I'll second that.
We only need 1 second. Who chooses? So Matt, you had the first seconded?
Go ahead, Brian.
It's just for the record.
No, it was me, Jim. But Brian. Brian.
I second that.
And who was that?
I think that's Brian.
That's Brian.
Okay. All right. Any comments before we vote?
Okay.
Okay, roll call.
Matt Gilman. Oh, sorry. Matt Gilman.
In favor.
Eric Usinger.
In favor.
Scott Davis.
In favor.
Brian Chapman.
In favor.
And Jim Engel.
I approve.
All right.
All right. Moving on to the next one. I propose that we approve the variance that they're requesting from Article 3.5 to allow 116 off-street parking spaces where 190 spaces are required. Any seconds or comments?
Are we doing this one, or does that second lot get wrapped up into this?
No, at this point, that was not requested to table. So we are going to vote on this variance request.
Okay, just want to make sure I was on the same page.
No, that's good. So we still need a second for that.
Seconded.
That was Matt?
Yep. That's
Okay.
Matt. All right. Ready?
Vote. Yep.
Brian Chapman.
I approve.
Matt Gilman.
In favor.
Scott Davis.
In favor.
Eric Usinger.
In favor.
And Jim Engel.
I approve.
I think, hey, Jim, I think you skipped.
Yes.
Okay,
Did I?
that's right.
No. Did I?
Yeah,
So
you
we've
said
done.
wall packs.
Yeah, I have them numbered on my thing.
Oh,
so
you're right.
So
No, thank you. I did. I went right to the next one. Okay. Well, I'll go back to that one. I propose that we approve the variance they're requesting from Article 2.4. Nope.
Yep.
2.4.4M this time to allow wall packs and 1 out of 4 pole-mounted LED lights to be dimmed by 11 rather than shutting them all off at 11.
Right.
I propose that we approve it. Okay. And
was that Scott?
Yes.
Was that Scott?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
I'm getting good at knowing your voices. All right. Roll
right.
call.
Vote. Yep.
Matt.
In favor.
Matt Gilman. Scott Davis.
In favor.
Eric Usinger.
In favor.
Brian Chapman.
In favor.
And Jim Engel.
I in favor.
All right. All right.
All right. So
Setbacks.
moving on. Yeah, the setbacks. So I'm going to just break it up. Is that how we're going to do it, Leanne?
Yeah. Yeah. So your motion will just be up to the point of the
Excluding
the 6 foot. So you'll just read it, or I'll. Yep. I've got it anyway. But go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I propose that we approve their variance request from Article 4.3 to allow a retaining wall adjacent to the parking area with a 28-foot setback where 50-foot setback is required, a parking lot with a 20-foot setback where 30-foot is required in the zoning, in the RG zoning district, and that's it.
Is this where we would put language in, Jim, as far as the front not parking on that area, the grassy area? Where we're letting them in within, it's a 30-foot setback, but we're letting them have just a 20? Was my concern in the front. I know it's on the right side, but it still keeps cars from parking on that grassy area.
Yes, that would be, this would be, now, so at this point, no, that's good. So that was my proposal. If we want to discuss that, we definitely can. If we want to add that, we can definitely do that. We would have to propose a different proposal.
Can we take each one of these separately then, as opposed to putting them together? Can we take like the first one, which is the 28-foot setback and the 50-foot, and vote on that? And then, because the only one that I'm talking about is the middle one, is the one in the front.
No, I don't think we would need to, because they're applying for a variance. And Leanne, please let me know if I'm wrong here, but they're requesting a variance from an article. There's a bunch of setbacks. We can add a stipulation that within the 20-foot setback.
Hey,
no,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to make sure. Do we have to table this entire setback or this entire variance, because the setbacks for that lower parking lot are tied up, at least in the email they have, they're all one variance.
They are, but
so by voting in affirmative of that variance, then we are voting in affirmative to give them the 6-foot setbacks for that lower parking lot.
No, Matt, you're really not, because you are in your motion saying what you're giving them a variance for, and then you're going to table the other one. But you certainly can choose to table the whole thing if you like. That's certainly fine. And another thing I wanted to mention with regard to the grassy area, you can put a condition on there that they don't use that area, but also the planning board will be reviewing this, and they could be making those comments on their plan as well. So you kind of have two bites of the apple on this. So the planning board might make that similar restriction on parking on the grass, which is more in their area. So either way.
Okay.
Jim, I would like to table them all. I just wanted to make sure we weren't inadvertently approving something we didn't mean to. That was all.
Okay.
Yeah, your motions are very specific on what you're approving. So, and you're going to table the other one, so it's on the record the action you're taking on the mixed use district.
Okay. So as far as parking on the grassy area, is that still a concern? Do you think we need to spell that out?
I do. I would appreciate that. I just don't know how we'd word it. Do we prohibit parking with inside the setback, the 20-foot setback?
You can just have the wording, and you restrict any parking on the grassy area.
Yeah,
indicated by the plan.
Yep, I can do that. All right, so let's see, how do we proceed with that? So I have already proposed.
Yeah, I got it.
Variance, but
I don't think it ever got seconded.
It didn't. It did not get seconded. So I'm going to propose a second.
No.
Yeah. So I'm going to propose a different proposal of approving the variance that they are requesting from Article 4.3 to allow a retaining wall adjacent to the parking area with a 28-foot setback where 50-foot setback is required, a parking lot with 20-foot setback where 30-foot is required in the RG zoning district, and also stipulating that no vehicles be parked in the grassy area along Main Street.
Okay.
Who is that?
Yep, I got it.
Matt.
I want to make sure.
Matt, okay.
All right, roll call. Brian Chapman,
I approve.
Scott Davis,
I approve.
Eric Usinger,
I approve.
Matt Gilman,
I approve.
and Jim Engel.
I approve.
And now you want to make a motion to table the request for the 6 feet?
Yes.
So we don't get that? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to table the variance request for the parking lot with 6 foot, from the Article 4.3 for parking lot with a setback, 6 foot setback where 20 is required in the MU zoning district.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay. Vote.
Roll call. There's no discussion on a table, so Matt Gilman,
In favor.
Brian Chapman,
In favor.
Eric Usinger,
In favor.
Scott Davis.
In
Scott
favor.
Davis, did I? Okay, and Jim Engel. So this is tabled.
Yep, in favor.
Yep.
And moving on, I'd also like to propose that we table the variance request from Article 6, Appendix B, I, G, 1, automotive sales and retail to allow in the mixed use district. We're going to table that.
There a second on the table?
I'd second that.
Okay, vote.
And Brian Chapman,
I approve.
Matt Gilman,
In favor.
Scott Davis,
In favor.
Eric Usinger,
In favor.
and Jim Engel.
I approve.
Right,
And
special exception.
special exception, last one. So I propose that we approve the special exception for from Article 2.3 RG, RC, GC for a sign exceeding 20 feet in height, and they're requesting a 30-foot high sign.
Do you want to say so no higher than 30 feet?
Yes, that's what they're requesting. That's what I'm proposing that we approve.
Seconded.
Okay, vote. Or discussion. No? Okay, sorry, vote.
All right, Eric Usinger,
I approve.
Scott Davis,
I approve.
Matt Gilman,
In favor.
Brian Chapman,
I approve.
and Jim Engel.
I approve. All right. So that is all for that. The zoning board case 2002. And any other business, Liam?
I don't have any other business. I assume you're going to resubmit those plans for the next meeting in May, correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
Or not? Or yeah, or you can decide not to, I guess. Right.
Well, we'll have to go back and figure magic and
Do something,
hopefully
right?
up with something quick.
First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Chairman, all of your help and the board for looking at our program. Like the Gaudettes, we are a family. My dad built the facility that we're currently in 1962, and we've been very good neighbors of the community, and God knows produced tens of millions of dollars of taxes in that time. I understand the angst of what's going on Morrison, and I promise you that we will come up with a solution that works for all. I understand, what you guys have been going through with that, and if you work with us on the solution, I think we'll be able to get the traffic off of Morrison and keep those neighbors happy. So that's my
Great.
goal.
I look forward to seeing what you come up with.
Yeah.
Thanks for you spending some time on this. I
Thank you, sir.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a long evening, but I think we're all set. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting of.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Yes, sorry. We're going to
Okay.
make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to
Zoning
adjourn.
board. And do we have to do a roll call vote?
Thank you.
Yeah. Second.
Seconded.
Matt seconded it.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, Brian Chapman,
I agree.
Matt Gilman,
In favor.
Pause.
In favor.
Eric Usinger,
I'm in favor.
Scott Davis,
Yes.
and Jim Engel.
I approve.
Jim, really nice job. I know this was kind of a tough thing to navigate through.
Very awkward.
Great job.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yeah, you killed it.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Great job.
Thank all of you.
Nice job.
Great
And,
job.
Good night.
hopefully
Yes.
we'll see you next month.
Forward to it.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right.
Night, everyone.